In this episode of Shipwrecked, we are joined by Samantha Anderson and Avi Gitler. Samantha is a gigabrain working at the intersection of art and law as the Director of Legal and Fiduciary Services at AIG. Avi is an art gallerist and producer dedicated to showcasing rising artists from around the world. Both guests have quite an extensive history in the traditional art world, and it was an honor to pick their brains. We dive into the promises of blockchain technology and how it could improve the art world forever, comparisons between digital artists in and out of the NFT space, the current art market as seen by Sam and Avi, and so much more. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Redbeard, Deeze, and guests may own NFTs discussed.
Welcome back to another episode of Shipwrecked. We have a very special episode today, Deeze. I think people are going to be very excited for this. We have decided to have two very special guests today, okay? People in our space will not recognize them. That's because they don't know anybody outside of their basement. But these two individuals, I'm going to introduce right now, are from the trad art world. They don't own
traditional
art world.
Thank you.
Did you know that we call it the trad art world?
Did you ever? Only when we first met a few weeks ago,
right?
And I did like a double take.
And you're like, "Wait, what's trad art mean?"
I think I spilled a little coffee on my pants when I said that. Yeah.
You were like shocked.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's do introductions. But I just want to be very upfront. Avi and Samantha, these hold on, don't freak out or for anything. I'm just going to tell you something now. They do not own any NFTs.
I'm not freaking out.
They don't own any NFTs. Smart?
Yeah.
Better than us, right? Way smarter than us.
Better than us, smarter than us.
He's smarter than us. Okay, let's go through this. Let's do the introductions. Avi, we'll start with you. You want to tell us a little about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Wow. It's a very open-ended question. How much time do I have?
2 hours.
You have all the time in the world.
Sure, I'll do 60 seconds. So my name is Avi Gitler. I don't have a background in art, actually, formally. So unlike your other guest, you'll meet in a second, I never studied art history, never worked at any galleries or in sort of any part of the traditional art space. After college, I traveled for about 10 years around the world. I started buying art when I was in high school for like $50, $100. I had a job on 72nd and West End cutting pastrami and corned beef, and made some dough and spent it on trad art. I love that.
We just seamlessly work that in.
Yeah. Seamlessly worked it in. And then basically about 10 years ago, I started an art business. I had an art gallery for about 5 years. And I do all of the things that people in the trad art world do to make money, which is fucking hustle. I don't know if this is a family show or
No.
There's a lot of fun.
I hustle a lot, so I represent artists. I sell paintings. We've done about 80 exhibitions. My company, we're very involved in public art, large scale public art. We do advisory, so we advise collectors on what to buy. Corporate collaboration. So usually I'm wearing some clothing that I got from I don't buy clothing. I'm almost done. Don't worry. And then the other part of my life, which I'll mention quickly because it doesn't involve art and art's kind of boring. I live in the Catskills and mill my own lumber and build houses and do cool shit. So those are the sort of two parts of my life. And that's who I am.
I mean, there's another host that we usually sometimes have in the show. His name is Andy, a good friend of ours. And I have to say, I thought that he had a good mustache.
That's it.
Magnum PI ain't got shit on me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is an epic. You almost look like an artist. I mean, you definitely look like you could sell art with that mustache.
Maybe
the mustache.
Not as much as you, I don't think.
No. I mean, this is what you do. Did you grow the mustache because when you decided that you were going to be a lumberjack that you needed the mustache, or did you? That was the. Yeah,
for those who only have access to audio, I do look like a lumberjack. It's pathetic. Listen, we can psychoanalyze this for 2 hours if you want. It's I was a late bloomer. End of story. Okay. I'm desperate to feel like a real man, like the way Generation X wants to feel like a real man. Our heroes are Schwarzenegger and stuff. So you get it.
That's why I grew a beard, by the way.
Yeah, we're two peas from the same pod.
We really are, by the way. It's very weird. All right, Samantha, let's hear an intro to you. And
God, I have to follow that.
I know. I don't
you don't
mill your own lumber?
Anything. I don't wear plaid usually. I should switch it up. But my version of plaid was like a private school uniform. So we're really coming at this from very different
areas.
I want to hear about that.
Yeah. I'm Samantha Anderson. I am an art lawyer in the trad art space, though I think after today I'll never say that again. I work at an international art advisory. I'm the director of legal and fiduciary services, which basically means I'm in-house counsel and then do some advisory planning for collectors. My company is called Art Intelligence Global. We are headquartered between New York and Hong Kong. So we're known for having quite an international base. And we were founded by some auction house veterans and big people in the art world. So it's a very different from, I think, everybody else here.
I think we're all going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
For me, I got into art because of my wife. She was, an art history major, and she started like, oh, we got to buy art. And then, she used to take me around. I remember we saw this Toulouse-Lautrec exhibit in Washington, D.C. And I'm like, all right, we'll go for like 20 minutes. 6 hours later, I was like, this is the smallest exhibit in the world. How are we still here? But she did give me that passion. And I know, Deeze, you started really collecting like
in the last couple of years. I didn't really collect before I had money. I was much more of a gamer, much more of a competitive person who was focused on, at one point in time, trying to go pro in League of Legends, and that didn't work out. I almost failed out of college. Switched my major out of computer science, switched to communication because I had to graduate. Got a job working for the government. I fucking hated it. I was working in IT. And during that time, got into crypto. I this time no art background. I took one art history elective in college. But getting into crypto takes 4 years to make some money, lose all of it, and then make a lot more money. And then during that process, it's like, wow, we have all these awesome artists around us, and now I have money. And I start getting into collecting. First, I start getting into generative art. It's a lot easier to just kind of dive into. I don't know if you guys have heard of art blocks, but that was like my first experience with generative art. I was minting these squiggles for like $30 and was just like, these are crazy. That's the first time anyone just started yelling out there.
It actually kind of responded to you.
I know. Damn, is he gonna come in here and try to get some squiggles? But watch out. But anyway, I get into generative art, and then through generative art, I start learning more just about art in general, and I start talking to artists, start buying more one-on-one art, and then fast forward 2 years, and I'm a big art collector in our space, at least, not in the
Well, I think in every art space, the money comes first and then the collecting. It's really hard to collect without money. So.
Yeah, and it's I never was buying art to flip it. I was flipping these things called CryptoPunks. That was a full-time job for me where I would just spend 8 to 12 hours a day in their Discord buying and selling them. And it was a lot like a video game.
Well, that's kind of an interesting thing you just said. You said I'd never flipped art, but you flipped CryptoPunks. So do you not think of them
at the time, when I say art, I mean one-on-one art in my head. I was never buying, pieces that an artist put out where there's only one of them to try and flip it in a week or two.
I don't think I flipped any of my one-to-one art yet, right?
I've definitely sold some for losses.
Oh, right.
Does that count?
No, we're not supposed to talk about that on air.
Can you define flipping in your space?
So
because we have our version of flipping.
Right?
Well, before we get to that, I mean, we can get into that first and try this later. But I can't let it slide that someone said that the money comes first and then the art.
Oh,
I think
because you're in high school, $50.
But you've got to have I mean, you can gift art, you can trade art, but if you're gonna, I think it's hard to seriously collect what you want to collect without some resources.
I mean, it's like a sort of foundational concept of my life, is anathema to what you just said. So I have a really hard time. That's why I couldn't just completely let it slide. And, Benny and I were talking about this when we first met a month ago. I like to think that everything that I've done professionally over the last decade has been focused on accessibility, whether it's in the public art space. I love that. Or it's through the way that I've dealt. And I'm particularly interested in emerging artists. And I did start buying things for almost no money. And this is a huge thing for me, is to convince people that they collect art. And I'm going to pause for effect, good art for very little money. Maybe not stuff that's investment grade.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of wonderful artists, probably also in the digital space, who are accessible at very low price points.
Yeah.
And that's something that like I really try to champion. So I wanted to just bring it up.
No, but I think unless you got your first piece from trading a table you made, even still, that's still like an economy there. So even you need some amount of money. I'm not saying you need millions to collect, but you need some sort of, you've got to have something that you don't live off of that you can spend on art.
It's a luxury. I mean, I just want to say it's a luxury.
I actually disagree that it's a luxury. I don't think it's a luxury, but I think that you have to be able to expend some resources on it. You can't be living paycheck to paycheck and really collect what you want to collect. You can maybe pick up some things that are interesting or good, but like you've still got to be able to say, I can spend $10 on a guy in the subway, and some people can't. So there's still, even if it's on the smallest scale, you still have a little bit of a barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is not, sorry if this is redundant, it is not a staple. But I do think if we're talking about your average American who has a certain amount of disposable income, right? Let's forget New York and, stories about people who make $500,000 who can't make ends meet, boo-hoo, time to move. I really think that art is accessible to anybody.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right? If you set aside $50, $100, you can find something. And one of the things that I tell new collectors all the time is, if you're really passionate about this and you really want to learn about this, I will encourage people to go to something like Bushwick Open Studios or to an Open Studios program. And I'm always telling people that half of this is a joke and half of this is a serious, probably across all platforms. Artists tend to be an insecure group of people. Sorry, I don't mean to insult.
That seems pretty true from everything I know.
And I tell people, you'd be surprised at how far a sincere, and I want to stress the word sincere, a sincere compliment goes. When you go into someone's studio and you respond to the work viscerally, emotionally, and you tell people how much you love it, certainly in the earlier stages of an artist's career, certainly if they haven't had any success, and the postal couple, what are they forgetting their names, who collected all the, I'll get to them in after, but you can walk out with like something amazing for almost no 100%. Money. Almost no money.
So I'm gonna stop. This is such a great segue. You know why? Because we have a solution for that. Because where the most accessible, easy, cheap art is to get right now? Digital art on the blockchain. Just throwing it out there, because you're right. We believe very strongly that artists have a chance to create their own microeconomy in which they could sell things cheaper, which doesn't always have to be, by the way, be in a gallery, right? Where they could sell it and have their own provenance. So I do agree with you. I think that a lot of the artists that we bought, Will, who I've been buying with for a few years now, we always try to buy from the artists. Like sometimes we see things where like, you know what, we're going to take a chance on that for like $500, $200. And we turn around and, sometimes it doesn't work out and sometimes it does, but we buy it because we love the art that we're buying.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you added that last line.
Yeah.
Because, it's interesting. I don't come to this from the money. I really come to it from passion. And I have never in 25 years of collecting seen something and said, I'm going to take a chance on this.
Right.
That's never been the way that I've approached it. It's been whether or not I love the piece, or I felt the artist was interested and had something to say and wanted to support them. But I mean, I'm speaking for myself. Definitely not speaking for the trad art world, but I'm speaking for myself. That's never been the approach for me. So it's sort of funny to hear you, articulate.
No, I think that there's never been art that we've bought. I think there's art that we've bought that we loved and we knew that we're never going to sell again because it's not sellable.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
and I think that's part of the whole process. I mean, but let's be honest, right? Like I hear what you're saying, and I believe that you've had many conversations now, and I believe that your heart, that you really do love it, but you still do it for a living. Right?
Barely.
Right. Okay. Well, that's not my fault.
No, it's definitely.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, it's still.
I'm about to start crying.
So with that said, let's kind of piggyback off of that. So the NFT world, right? Which I would say that we just had this conversation. We hate the word NFTs.
Yeah.
We kind of want to change that, right? Because I don't think it gives the same connotation of what you say and what you say, and you might say two different things, kind of saying, but you see very similar things about, and we won't say the trad art space, but about the art space in general. And I think that the idea that you're talking about is very much what really, grew this sort of whole, system. It really didn't start off as like, I need to flip art. No. What happened was that
people selling art for
right. It was selling art. I remember
$20.
it was like $20 and $100, and we were first buying. There was
taking their art from Tumblr.
Yeah, and correct.
Sure.
Or they're probably people who shouldn't have been there and were whatever. But I would say that some of the art that we bought at the beginning, the early collectors, most of us bought because we didn't either have the opportunity to buy more expensive paintings that was in the regular art space, or we didn't have the knowledge to know that there was other places to get things that were cheaper that had good art. And I think that's a lack of an education that we all had in the space that we didn't fully understand. I still think that we have here that we don't. These two worlds aren't meeting because we don't know enough, and
there's very little overlap.
There's very little overlap,
And this was the conversation you and I had the first time we met.
Yeah,
and you'll appreciate this. Benny came at it from this like, well, we felt like we couldn't be in the traditional art space. Like it's this closed door society. We don't know how to get into it. And one thing I'd said to him was, have you ever gone to the Lower East Side? Have you ever looked at the galleries in Brooklyn? Like there are accessible entry points in our world, but they don't do a good enough job of kind of publicizing, or even in the highest end of the art market, you can walk into any auction house in your pajamas. Like I always say, if you're homeless, go to an auction. There's free booze and bagels on a Saturday. But there is no, I think it's just been kind of a historical, glass tower type thing, but it really isn't anymore. I mean, obviously at the top ends, there are some, things that are really reserved for a select group of people, but you can engage.
And I didn't know that, honestly, because the art that I was buying was from Instagram, right? Because I saw all these artists on Instagram. So when I started collecting physical art, with my wife, it was like, oh, we got a lot of commissions done. Like, that was the thing that we found like fun. I could show a commission here if you put it up, but by this young artist in Texas, and I started collecting those things. Like the biggest art piece I ever got was my wife was finishing her master's on oh my God, I'm blanking.
Hans Bellmer.
Thank you, on Hans Bellmer. And
his wife's master's better than he does.
The first time I met them, they told me this story, and I tell other collectors this. I'm like, this is the purest.
Yeah.
It's really
so she was studying him and did this thesis, and she was all excited. And I found I had started making a little extra money on crypto finally at the time. It was like perfect timing, and I found this place that was selling a print signed by him, lithograph, right?
It's photograph. Yeah. It's the poupées.
Yeah.
It's the doll, the Hans Bellmer. Oh, you have an art history degree. The Hans Bellmer dolls that he did, where they basically, it's like a very grotesque kind of mannequin, and it's positioned in really kind of eerie ways.
And he made all these things, like he drew some of these pictures. He took pictures, and he had drawings when he was from jail. Yeah. So I found this picture and its drawing. So I got the picture and I got the drawing. The picture was amazing, and then the drawing was this signed lithograph. And I spent a lot of money on it. I was like, I don't know if this is real, and it was really hard for me to find everything out because I was just doing it on my own.
Yeah.
And I brought it to my wife, and I could show the pictures. Like she was, crying, like she was in tears. It's in our living room. And to me, that was like the first piece of fine art that even though I know it's not like his original, but for me, it was a big deal. And then after that, I was like, oh, collecting is fun. Like, it's like really interesting. And that's how it was kind of easy for us to get into like the space for that,
I think it's interesting you mentioned Instagram too, because that for us has been a game changer in the traditional art space. It used to be that you had to find artists from a gallery show or a museum show, and there was kind of a tried and true path to getting that artist established and have their market grow. And Instagram really has disrupted our industry as well. Mm-hmm. Even where I work, again, we're kind of at the top of the food chain, but we look at artists on Instagram. We reach out to them on Instagram, and that has democratized our market in a very mirroring way to what has happened in your space.
Yeah.
Because now you don't go through the gallery. Now you don't have to find an artist and then negotiate through their intermediary. You can direct message an artist on Instagram and say, I love your work. How can I get involved? What can I buy? Can I do a show with you?
Yep.
And so they have a little bit more agency now because of that channel.
A lot more agency.
Yeah.
And do you think, and Avi, do you think that makes for more people to become tastemakers in some ways because they have the ability to kind of just have the access to the art to see? So, I'm
thinking about the word tastemakers. That's
I would consider
that's throwing me for a loop, that particular word choice.
Okay. Tell me why. Tell us your feelings, Avi. Don't be shy.
Yeah, I'm
You don't even have to worry about that with him.
I love
If anything,
this.
it's like, hold back, Avi, hold back.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, how many enemies do I want to make today? Yeah. I have to stop myself. There's one time I was on a podcast and they interviewed a bunch of people after it was at NADA in Miami some years ago, which is a very cool, hip, traditional art fair. And I wouldn't listen to it afterwards. I was like, I better not listen to this. Like, I don't know how many people I insulted. So I want to stop myself. Look, I'll add on to what Samantha said instead of addressing your question.
Swerve.
Yeah. Look, it definitely has been a game changer. It's definitely been a disruptor. And when a lot of young artists come to me and ask me about how they can access that traditional path, via galleries to museums, which would be, sort of the ultimate goal for a traditional artist, a museum show at a major museum. I actually tell a lot of them that they don't need that traditional path because it is really a golden age for the art world, for the traditional art world, or I should say the art world in so many ways. The access, the size of the audience, which is global, the ability to, sell directly, negotiate directly, deal directly. I mean, this is true of all social platforms. But Instagram in particular has been extraordinary for visual artists. And it's really changed everything.
So you do. So then, okay.
I don't use it. I don't use it, which I'm skipping.
I know you. Yeah, we talked about
because I'm a baby,
but
but we'll skip that.
We're gonna get you in social media one of these days.
Not using
He
crazy.
He doesn't use social media. Well, he lives in a log cabin.
Yeah.
I mean,
when you're
But that makes great content. Like, we love log cabin.
Yeah, I mean,
content.
I can't wait. I'm visiting the log cabin
episode where we go mill some wood.
Yeah, by the way, we should go to his. I'm going this week. I want
to tell you that milling wood at my place is like the opposite of everything that is here right now.
I have to tell you, it sounds like a euphemism too. You're like, let's go mill some wood.
Right.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So true.
What are you really doing?
So it's very interesting because everything you're saying, both of you, is what people like Deeze and myself would champion the digital art space that we're in. What's so good about it is that the access and the sort of provenance and the way that an artist can get straight to the buyer without going through these hoops and loops and what they have to do. So it's interesting because you feel that that's a really positive step for the art space that you're in, and we kind of feel the same way. So in some ways we really are agreeing and getting along here. So okay, so let's hold.
Well, I think we have a lot in common.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is the whole point. Okay, so now that we take that part, we all agree on that. Okay, wait, hold on.
As he sits like this.
Lunch a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You look very calm and relaxed.
So if that's the
morning.
case, let's go to that next step, right? The next step I would ask you is the great part if you see it on Instagram and then you're buying it, right? That piece gets sold to somebody who buys it, that person holds it, and then they sell it to somebody else. In the digital art space that we're in, somebody buys that painting and they sell it, the original person still has ownership over it. How do you feel about that provenance? Is that something that's important to you, not important to you? And be honest, I just want...
Do you mean like the kind of royalty aspect?
Yeah, the royalty aspect of it.
I mean, I think we can breeze right through this. I think we probably... I'm guessing we probably all agree that there is a lot of value in that we want to see creatives rewarded for their intellectual property. I really don't have anything to add that's, going gonna...
I mean, like royalties are crazy in the NFT space. Like, let's just look at X Copy, for example. He was selling his art for $50, $100 in 2018 on Super Rare. Fast forward to 2021, his pieces are selling for $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 million. He's getting 10% of every sale. So even though he might have sold the piece originally for $100, when it got flipped for $7 million, he gets $700,000, and that's like, to me, crazy. And it gives them upside in their career once the piece leaves their hands. How do you feel about stuff like that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so. I'm a lawyer, and I used to work in auction, and this was a hot topic a few years ago in the art world. And California actually tried to pass their own artist resale royalty, and it's very different in Europe. And stop me when this gets boring, but in Europe, they have something called the droit moral, the droit de suite, and every artist is entitled to a percentage of their resale, but it's capped.
It's capped at a certain
It's capped, and I believe it's like 12,500 euros. Yeah.
So
if you
is it like before it's capped, is it a percent based?
It's a percent based. I think it's 5%, but don't quote me on that. And then it's capped. So if you're on
every sale,
on every sale. So when you buy something at auction in London, you're paying the premium, the buyer's premium, and then you're paying this what's called ARR, artist resale right.
This is amazing. See, this is information that we need,
and it 100%. Works in Europe to some extent, but you could go into the whole legal framework, because in Europe they also have more of a right over what their art is. So, for example, if you need to have a Miro authenticated and you have to send it to the Miro committee in Spain, they have the right to seize and destroy it if it's fake. We would never have that right in the U.S. because our legal framework is entirely different.
So they get the painting and then realize it's fake, and then they can burn it.
So like at auction or as a dealer, if you have a client and they want to sell a Miro or a Rodin, you have to basically have them sign a waiver that says we're not liable, because when we send it to them, they have the right to say it's incorrect and then destroy the work. They literally have that seizure right. So, and you can't sell a Miro or Rodin without a certificate, without the stamp. So you're kind of in a weird liminal place where do you risk it? How risky is it? Do you have enough provenance? But there's always that in the back of your head that it could be destroyed. In the US, we don't have that. And in fact, in the last 10 years, almost all the authentication committees shut down because we're a litigious society. Like, I do well as an attorney. It was a good choice. And the Warhol Foundation, the Herring Foundation, Boscat, everyone realized that they were getting sued left, right, and center, and it was like $10 million.
They were getting sued because people said it was real.
So like a great legal case, if you ever want like really fun reading, I say somewhat facetiously, there's a famous Warhol case called the Double Denied Warhol. I think the site is like Simon Whelan versus Warhol Foundation. This guy had a Warhol with a self-portrait. He had all the provenance to back it up, sent it to the foundation, and their practice was to stamp the back of works with denied. So they couldn't destroy it, but they could at least like make sure there was a physical. So he got it back and said, I disagree entirely. I want you to reconsider. So he resubmitted, and they somewhat jokingly stamped it a second time. So it's now called the Double Denied Warhol.
Wow.
And then
let's digitize it. Let's digitize
well,
it.
So it's funny you say that, because there was actually a proposal to turn it into an NFT. It ended up selling at like a small auction house for like $10,000. But if it had been correct, if it had been authenticated, it probably would have sold for millions.
Was Naomi Campbell the one who said, I don't get out of bed for less than $10,000? I feel like an NFT crypto guy's like, I don't.
Yeah.
No,
that was a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Now it's a bear market.
I'll get out of bed for a ham sandwich.
Can't be choosers.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll get up for like $50. I might get out of bed now.
Also, I have a proposal. I said before, I don't think I have anything to add to the royalty conversation, but actually, I have a proposal. I'd love to hear what you think of it. People are getting royalties on the resale, right? And we're talking about pieces like it was sold for $9,000 and now it's being auctioned for $1 million and he's getting 10%. What about pieces that are bought for $1 million and then resold for $10,000? Maybe the artist should have to return some of the money.
I 100% agree.
All right, so
I was in a position
where
I bought a piece for almost $1 million, and I tax loss harvested it for $300,000 within the same year.
Yeah,
and I did not pay that artist the royalty for that sale at $300,000.
Can
you do that? Sorry, I thought under like the smart contract.
So it's very interesting. So now
did I just expose you?
No, not at all. So right now there's interesting thing going on in the community right now. Some smart contracts that were written, and going forward, I think people are writing smarter contracts, I guess.
There's no way
there's really
100% guarantee a royalty on blockchain.
So you could set...
Really?
So you
because
could set
if you want a...
Because you go off chain with it, or what's the?
No, I mean,
were you impressed?
so the way it works is like, what is stopping me from moving one asset from one address to another address on the blockchain? Nothing.
Huh.
So I can make a deal with somebody and say, you send me X amount of money, I'll send you the piece. It doesn't happen in an auction on a contract or anything. It's just me trusting the person or them trusting me. One of us goes first, and you can do stuff like that. Or there's other.
So I guess, like, you know, on the royalty issue, the art market has grappled with it, and there's kind of been a definitive answer, which is that we're not going to do it in the U.S. But I think that when we think about it, most of us, we agree that'd be a good thing for artists to get compensated. But I think there's other ways they get compensated. And like when you look at an artist going to auction, I'm not saying it's always a good thing, but where it can be a good thing, if you know they're not getting any royalty out of it, is that it promotes their market, it resets their prices. And so they do get a positive benefit, even if they're not getting a monetary benefit. It's like a long-term economic as opposed to a short.
And on the flip side, you know, I have lots of artist friends who are, you know, entering that mid-career stage, whose works are sold. I mean, it's no different than in the digital space. Their works are sold for a high price. Yeah. And then they're kind of screwed because...
Well, and again, I'm careful to say, like, auction, I know, is a tricky thing for mid-career. But I think that if, you know, in the example of they were selling for $10,000, now it goes to auction for $1 million, they should get a cut of that. Mm-hmm. Well, in the absence of that, they do get...
Definitely.
No, for sure. And I think everybody gets out of it. And I think in this community, it's interesting because most people, I would say that, you know, are paying the royalties on the side because they don't want to do it on the platform. But they do it on the platform because because it's more secure. So if personally, if I'm buying a piece for $1 million, I would say that, you know, Will and I would want to buy it on a platform, probably because we just are really scared of doing a transaction outside of that, right?
Well, and our corollary is like there are shady dealers and shady galleries.
Exactly the same thing.
I a little bit more.
And this is an emerging market in digital space, so there's going to be a ton more shady people than at the beginning.
I
don't know.
There's more of us, so I think like, you know, on a
percentage
base. I don't know.
Are there?
Well, I think the art market, I think you would agree with this, is so oversaturated on every level right now. Like there's 1 million advisors, there's 1 million galleries, there's more artists than ever, there's more art than ever. Like we've just mushroom clouded in terms of the volume.
Yes.
So I think from a percentage basis, I think you guys have gotten a little bit more curated in your group. Like after things blew up, the kind of true believers and the true proponents stayed around.
Yeah,
and now it's become like a little bit more of a it's a closer group, whereas we've just like spread.
I agree with people who are serious about it know one another.
Right,
and,
that's
I think it's equally curated
about a closed group because we all
I think our closed group is very. So also the other thing is that you could follow the chain. So if somebody does something and doesn't pay an artist, there's people who are very vocal and like, you should have paid that artist. That's like, ridiculous.
Well, we have the New York Times. They call them out. You know, we have the New York Times.
You have the New York Times.
And we like you go to an opening and you realize who can't buy works, and you know you kind of know there's only so many reasons that you get blacklisted from a gallery, and the big ones are like you either don't pay or you flipped it, or you know. So
they get mad if you flip the art.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because the reason I asked about like what flipping is in your world, because in our world, flipping is like kind of a defined term. Like there's a little bit of variable in how people see it, but flipping is really like if you buy a young artist or an artist who like you really had a duty to support them and hold that and promote them, and instead you saw that the prices were going up, and so maybe within 3 years, 5 years, you then sell it. And we have like non-resale provisions in the traditional art space where you can buy a work and the person you bought it from could actually give you a contract that says you will not sell this for 3 years. And if you do sell it, you have to sell it back to me because I represent the artist and I protect them. And so it can't go to auction.
I would say flipping, as someone I guess who's flipped a bit, to me is something that's looked at on an even shorter time horizon than what you said. Like instead of 3 to 5 years, it's like less than 1 year in my mind.
So if you hold for more than 1 year, you're not flipping.
in our space,
like that's a long enough time.
Because it's
well,
only
our space
has only existed
only
for
like
4 or 5 years.
I was going to say,
so there's really no like,
years,
like if you would have told X copy that, hey, I'm not selling this for 3 years because I bought it for $50, and then like 3 years later it's worth $1 million, and you're like, dude, my net worth's like 25 grand. Like I need to sell this.
Right.
Like it would be different, I think.
But actually they celebrate a little bit. Like I know artists like, I just don't.
It's easy to celebrate when you're getting a 10% royalty.
Yeah, that's true. Also,
like
but,
there.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But the artists, I think, in our space are very much into the idea because they're getting the royalties back, so they don't mind the constant sort of flipping. Now, I will say, flipping really did start because the idea of fine digital art, like X copy and some of the things we're going to show you today, definitely didn't start right away. Right? It started with the apes and the all the picture stuff you see, the JPEGs, and people were sort of just flipping those and flipping, like buying, flipping. It was like trading a stock, right? It's trading a coin. It was like the same thing.
Video game items.
Yeah, and then what happened? I think over time, like what happened is that there was artists who came in. They're like, okay, I'm just going to drop a 1-to-1, or I'm going to drop a smaller collection, and that's when I think the flipping sort of changed its mode. Like there's not a lot of flipping when it comes to more of the fine digital art when there is to the PFPs, profile pictures, they call them, right?
The larger the supply, the more likely it is to be flipped. So I would say one thing you mentioned is about emerging artists and how there is this, as a collector, you need to help promote them and help spread, why you collected their work, why you connect them as an artist. I think in our space, flipping is normally more the higher end artists, like not the emerging artists are flipped. It's more like,
but it's the same.
So I was just going to say, we identify, so like when we're looking at the hierarchy of art from the market perspective, and I also think it's a good moment to just say, like, there's the art world and there's the art market. And critics and commentators of the market will say it is different from the world. And they're, they coexist and intersect, but they're different things.
Yes.
In the art market, we identify art as blue chip art, like a blue chip stock. And blue chip art is a commodity in a way.
Right.
The variable in the price is like plus 10, minus 10%. That's it. You want to buy a Gormley, it's always going to be, somewhere in a range. But that art, blue chip art, constantly gets flipped. And it's been flipped so much that there's actually a price index database for art where you can look at what your Warhol is worth if you hold it for 4 years, for 7 years, for 10 years. So it definitely happens at the top. And I think where the art market is worried, or those of us who care about it are worried, is for the emerging artists that have now been called like the now artists or even wet paint, where the auction houses are selling like a 28-year-old who's had 3 shows. He maybe was selling for $20,000 and now he's at $1 million. And that's the flipping that everyone gets nervous about, because that kind of hinders a long career, a stable career. That's how you kind of boom bust an artist. So it's different at the different levels.
If you want to really hear me go off, give me an hour on this topic.
Oh, let's go.
No, I'm not. I can't even. But yes, it's very problematic. It's very problematic, and no different than in your space. I believe, and I'd love to hear what you have to say, but I think the numbers are completely out of control. I think they're nuts.
I think now going into, so the big auction seasons are May and November, so we're in a little bit of like the lead up now. I think that last year, the auction houses, the dealers kind of overinflated prices. I think we were kind of heading towards what people thought was going to be like a pop of the bubble. I think now everyone wants to recalibrate. Like there is a little bit of responsibility at the top end to make sure that things don't explode. And so they're starting to kind of estimate things in a way that is real, not...
It's so fascinating to me because this is exactly what's happening with us right now.
Yeah.
We had a ridiculous run up. Like there was people who were selling for 50, 60, 70 Ether, which when Ether was like 2,000, 3,000. So you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for these art pieces. Now, they're selling for 20 and it's almost that recalibration. It's like, wait, okay, I know you're a good artist, right? I think you have a future.
You do?
Right. Hopefully. Right. But I it's also this sort of the craziness kind of subsided a little, and it's now like, okay, what is this really worth? you know? And I think that's kind of interesting because it's definitely very much what's happening.
Well, and I think
right
it's
now.
saying, what is this really worth? What you're also saying is, how long of a lifespan do I think you have?
Yeah.
And if you're, someone that's a flash in the pan, maybe I can sell you for a really high price and I can kind of get out.
Right.
But if I think that you've got a long career, you're going to appeal to a large audience, you've got growth, then you need to be protected to not get too big too fast.
And I definitely think that our digital art space, and I know like some of the numbers make you bug out and stuff, and I get it, and they should, and I think for a lot of us, I think that if we look back, I think there was a world where we kind of wish things did happen way slower.
Yeah.
And obviously this was a new thing, and there was obviously bad players and people who were pumping things and all that. We get that. But I think that unfortunately that kind of hurt us a little bit because now it's like, okay, wait, nobody's spending $2 million on this, right? And, it was sort of just everybody was in the zone. But with that said, now with the recalibration, I do think over time we're going to see hopefully the trad art space sort of be like, okay, let me take a look at this. Let me look at this. And I think that's, I don't know how they look at it now. I think that's sort of our next question is like, if I had to say the trad art world, which we're going to use again,
I feel like it's a drinking game. Every time you say it, I want to take a shot.
Yeah, exactly. We should have.
We got
the
beer.
beer.
Cheers.
We have the beer in the fridge.
Beer in the fridge.
But I guess our question would be is, how do you think that they view our space right now? And be honest, like I think that's a really important, kind of message.
I think we can answer this in a really interesting way because we are in very different parts of the art world. So I think this will be interesting.
Well, before we move on to how the trad art world sees the digital space, I just want to talk about the speed with which things are moving. Look, we're living in a very fast world. Everything is moving faster than it used to, and it's only going to get faster and faster. And it's also true of the traditional art space.
Okay.
So Samantha was talking a little bit about blue chip and the speed at which some careers are moving right now, and 20-year-olds selling for $1 million, which are now like a dime a dozen. I, for probably 15 years, would go to art schools all over the world and go to MFA shows and look to see who was making work. And for the longest time, meaning until the last few years, I could buy for $1,000 or $2,000 a fairly large, let's say medium to large scale work. And I can give you dimensions if you're curious what that means. Sure, that would be like a medium work, like 30 by 40 or something like that for $1,000 or $2,000. I went to a Columbia MFA show, I don't know, whatever, last June or something, walked through the show for an hour and said to one of my colleagues, this is the artist. I identified one artist and I said, I really like this artist. I feel like they have something to say. The work is interesting. They have a long-term career ahead of them. Just seeing half a dozen paintings instilled a lot of faith in this one particular artist. I made an inquiry, and the artist was going to have their first solo show at Casman, which is a major gallery. And the idea that a 25-year-old MFA artist would have a solo show at Casman 10, 20 years ago.
I'll say that's still an outlier because I think
it's an outlier.
Still start at like Tribeca, Lower East Side, then you get poached by Casman or Karma, then you get poached by Gagosian or Pace.
But the thing is,
you move your way up the food chain.
I don't know if there are any sports fans that listen to this, but
yes,
no,
I love sports.
No, but I think it's like the moment where high school basketball players started going directly to the NBA. And for the traditional basketball fan, they said no, you got to go to college. Like, yes, there's a LeBron, there's a Kevin Garnett, but like there are all these scrubs whose names I don't remember anymore who never made it. And there is something to be said for the traditional path. And I find it to be a little bit of a troubling development because one of the wonderful things about the traditional art space is it's always been very patient. You look at the world of ballet, a ballerina's career is over at 30. And one of the things I love as a 40-plus-year-old man is that in the traditional art world,
you're not that old.
No, in the traditional art world, you can still describe someone who's 40 years old as a young artist. And I fucking love that. Right. I think it's wonderful. It really gives people, artists, time to develop their craft. And this development, even if that particular example was an outlier, I find it to be troubling.
I don't know. I think I think, you started off talking about kind of accessibility and I think getting at like democratization of art. And I think that in some respects it can be troubling, but in others, it also is a little bit of like blowing the institution wide open.
Yes.
I think collectors and dealers always went to MFA shows just to kind of see.
Yes.
Can you tell us what an MFA show is?
It's so if you get like a master's as a fine artist. Okay. So an MFA is different from an MA. An MA, you could have an art history. An MFA means you go to art school.
Okay.
So it's after college.
So they have these like sort of like,
graduate school,
and then and they sit around and you go visit them.
It's open studios. So like the Hunter MFA is a great.
And
one.
how do you find them? You just look them up.
Go online and Google when the MFA show is, and it's open studios basically.
And then you find these artists. Just
walk
us through this because we don't know.
It's a building full of studios. They're all students, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're young. They could be like in their 50s and they got their MFA. They could be in their 20s.
Yeah.
You look urgent. What?
No. I was just going to say,
artists
do you want us to talk about the
themselves?
traditional? I don't know if we articulated this with enough detail. Do you want us to explain sort of the traditional path for an artist?
Yes.
Let's say pre-Instagram. Do you want to
Sure. I mean,
sort of go through that?
Typically, you got an MFA. So again, you went to college. You maybe were painting your whole life. You get this, graduate degree in painting, sculpture. Your MFA is specific to your medium, and you pick the school based off of your medium to some extent. So, like, if you're a painter,
meaning you got accepted for painting,
right? So, like, you'll go to the
sculpting.
Slade. The Slade in London is like one of the best MFAs in painting. But Columbia has a great MFA. Hunter. They're difficult to get into because they're small classes. It's not a normal graduate program. It's like 10 artists per. And so you'd finish your MFA. You're usually like maybe teaching at the same time, or you're supporting yourself somehow in addition. And then you'd have this degree show, and sometimes collectors would go, galleries would go, and that was basically your moment to get a market force behind you. So your degree show is this really important moment. That it's almost like how you get your first job. And it's
the debutante ball.
Exactly. It's your coming out party. But hopefully you've been doing studio visits and you've been promoting your work in other ways. But that was really your moment. Then you'd get picked up usually by a small gallery. So someone who's selling in kind of a entry level price point. Hopefully you got picked up by someone who the next biggest fish looked at. And then you'd kind of either work your way up. Galleries typically have like a threshold. So a small gallery doesn't necessarily have a critical mass of collectors that are in the 5-figure, 6-figure range. So if you as an artist really do start to move up, let's say on your third show, and you could sell for $50,000 or $70,000, then you're going to get poached by kind of the next fish in the chain.
So you go to these MFAs and you see an artist. You said that you're like, okay, that's the artist. Do you buy just 12 paintings from them? Like, how does it work usually?
Me? Yeah. Or, the typical collector?
The typical.
You're not buying volume. Because the other thing is, like, if you're supporting an artist as a collector, if you're a high-end collector, and so, we talked a little bit about what artists want for longevity and a little bit about institutions, but really what you want is a collector that has a great collection and great connections. So you want a collector that's on the board of a museum. You want a collector that owns other works that are important but also emerging. You want a collector that knows all the galleries and buys from all. Like, you want someone who's a connector.
So interesting. So yeah. And it seems like it's also, kind of like for us also, it's a little bit of a game, right? So if you're buying an emerging artist, and then a larger collector buys that emerging artist.
So, like, I have a friend with a show right now, and I love her work, and I want to buy one. But I said to the gallery, if you get someone better, they should buy it. So if you get someone with a great collection, and she's a female figurative artist, if they have an Alice Neal, it should go to them, not me, because I don't have an Alice.
It's just so fascinating because this is the exact same playbook that we have in our digital art place.
We're fucking humans,
right?
Exactly.
It really, we are. It's like
So just to kind of get us back to the path here, like what we think about digital art, I'll go really macro here. I think we recognize we're all humans. Like, there's a lot of corollaries just because it's like human psychology and emotion. And I think that and you can tell me what you think, and I won't speak for everyone out in the world, but I think there's a trend to see what happened early on, like the trading, the commodities, the CryptoPunks, the apes. Like, we all kind of looked at that and we're like, ugh, like that is not what we are. We are different things.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that if you look at art history, and like, forgive me, I have a master's in art history, so I love this. And and social anthropology. So this is like my perfect crossover. But if you look at the way that artists have agency in your world, I think we love that as like a utopian ideology. It's just really hard to implement on our side of things.
So do you think it's more of like a wait and see? Like they're kind of like, okay, that's interesting. Sort of like what you were talking about with graffiti art, right? Like, you know,
when we were talking.
Yeah. You're like, okay, that's really great art. But like they want to almost wait and see.
Well, I mean, are we talking about the art market or the art world? Like
I've
said before.
Let's
the art world is ready to have that conversation. The art market is already in. They are paying attention.
We've talked about this. I think that the art market is performatively in it right now. I don't know that they have drank the Kool-Aid totally. I think that they see any nascent market with a ton of money, they're into. So when when Beeple happened, and I almost feel like I shouldn't, it's like it's been overplayed. I hate talking about it. But when Beeple happened, if you're in the art world and you're speculating on young artists, imagine what a $69 million, I mean, everyone like salivated. And it was like, oh, a bunch of idiots who don't know anything about our world. Let's make some money off of them.
I didn't salivate. I puked.
Well, everyone had some sort of oral
from my mouth. It wasn't saliva.
But I think that we... Now, like the artists that went over to kind of your side, like I'm thinking about Urs Fischer. When he started, he was at a gallery that didn't really support NFT or digital art because they were like, I don't get it. And I think it's a little bit of a Ponzi scheme. And then he moved to a gallery that said, you know, we're into innovation no matter what the form is. So he went to Pace and Pace literally has a whole group called Pace Ventures where their only job is to come up with cool ideas. So I think that the art market, like people kind of dip their toes in, but I feel that in the wake of all the kind of crypto disasters and the NFT disasters, I think we're hedging towards, or we're in a little bit of a moment where you guys have an identity crisis to solve. And you have to kind of figure out what you want from the traditional art space. Like, do you want to be players in it? Do you want to be part of it? Do you want to be better than it? Do you want to be ancillary?
I think that the answer is, look, I think that and you could tell me if you agree, but I think we're kind of hitting a fork in the road right now, right? I think that there's sort of PFPs, right? Bored Apes that we still own and we're all in on everything. And then I think that there's sort of like art, right? And I think that that's sort of happening right now. I mean, like I've had these conversations. I've had conversations with you. Will and I have had these conversations and long, like deep into them, like, you know, where do we see our sort of bets and things that maybe like, you know, gaming and JPEGs and PFPs that all have some kind of value, but now we're realizing it's almost its own bucket, right? It's almost its own sort of like kind of world. And this other stuff that we're following is sort of like its own world too, which is like fine digital art. Like it's. So
can I ask you a hard question, perhaps?
I still have 3 more answers. I haven't got some other questions. I'm juggling too much shit in my head. I want to go back to Warhol, Double Denied. I want to talk about this. I'm like getting too many stimulus. Let me just blurt some shit out.
Please. Yeah.
So going back to Warhol, Double Denied, and tying in, fork in the road and identity crisis. Like, we need to separate the technology from the price of the underlying tokens that we fucking trade with. Like, that's an issue. 100%. The fact that we're buying things in ETH, and some days ETH is $300, some days it's $4,500, and we're like, 1 ETH equals 1 ETH, and we say all this dumb shit. Like, we do have a problem there, but I think the tech is what's powerful. If Andy Warhol fucking minted that portrait, so it was a self-portrait. So if it was a real self-portrait, this guy was physically with Andy Warhol, and then he would have minted it on chain, which would have said, hey, in January 1st, 1967, Andy Warhol at 3:13 p.m. and 3 milliseconds Eastern time put this picture, minted it into existence, and then gave it to this guy.
So and there's 2 companies doing that.
There's the romance in that.
No, but
you would ruin Antiques Roadshow. That's how I see it.
Nothing.
It's like, let's just turn it over, scan the barcode, and we're good.
There's 2 companies right now that do that, where they say your certificate of authenticity is hosted on the blockchain, but it's physical art. That exists.
Yep. Do you see that happening more with fine art?
Well, all of the scandal in the art world has been around authenticity and forgery, and then some shady dealers. And the blockchain has the potential to solve a lot of our problems. But I think there's a lot of holes in how it actually how it actually implements that. And then from the legal framework, it's really difficult because we have copyright law, we have commercial laws. I mean, it just doesn't totally work yet.
I definitely think that
it's so nascent.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. I think it's exciting, for me to look at and say, wow, someone's going to crack the code, and then it's going to make all of our lives a lot easier. It'll probably put a lot of us out of jobs because the art world is a friction-filled system.
It's a good thing Avi's a lumberjack.
He's got his apocalypse
plan. A miller.
Do you have a bunker?
I do have my apocalypse plan. What's that?
Do you have a bunker?
Tell us.
No, but now I have something to do this month.
Put all your physical paintings down there instead of on your hard drive.
This is, it's funny because in my mind, for me, the great advantage to digital art is the fact that it is not fucking physical and it doesn't need to be stored. We were talking about this. Yeah. I pay so much money for physical storage. I'm always moving things. I am going from here to a gallery where I just bought a piece by an interesting artist, Real Waters. What's so amazing to me is I'm here with two art collectors and someone who works in the art world who probably also collects art.
Oh, he just calls art collectors.
That
made me feel really good. Yeah, thank you.
Well, it's just amazing to me because we've been...
It wasn't digital or...
Okay, I will interrupt my point and just say quickly that I'm interested... Benny knows that I'm not interested in blockchain.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in most technologies. I will be super happy at the end of 2023 if you tell me that I've used my phone 50% less than I used it the year before, which I think is very telling because I think that's true of probably a lot of people. I don't know, because I don't know enough about the tech, what NFTs are capable of, what they can add to the artistic conversation, the aesthetic conversation, right? Blah, blah, blah. I'm interested in seeing that. What I'm personally not interested in at all is the market, because I'm just not interested in the art market in general. And that's sort of been a hallmark of what I do professionally. And so it's actually sort of amazing to me that I would sit with three art collectors, if that's fair, just because of the kinds of conversations that I typically have around the art space, and just talk about royalties and copyright law. It's all the shit that makes my life as a dealer miserable, and I'm not trying to sound like an asshole, but I'm saying these are the things that I really don't care about.
I'm not trying to be disrespectful. You just want to buy and sell.
Well, I want to be with creatives who are.
If I may,
please,
devil's advocate on you a little bit.
Go for it.
You care about artists from I can tell a very authentic level.
Yes.
Royalties, copyright law are all the protections we have in place.
Absolutely.
To protect the most disenfranchised from our system, which are the artists.
It's the part of the scene that I'm just not interested in being a part of. Meaning.
Leave it to the lawyers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Leave it to the lawyers.
And by the way,
I appreciate the role you play.
Yeah.
It's just not what interests me in the market.
And by the way, there's a lot of people in our space who also feel the same way about the tech. Honestly, I don't know enough about smart contracts and blockchain. I know because I've been in the space for a while. But the truth is, I always see it I've said this a million times. When I drive my car, I don't give a shit how my car works. I just want my car to work, right? So it's the same thing with art and blockchain. I just want to know that this is working really nicely. Now we're friends with great devs and people who make insanely smart contracts. But I agree. For me, everybody's like, oh, you're going to do this, I'm like, I just want to have dinner with the artist, right? That's exciting to me.
That's what got me into collecting, honestly. So I got popular in this space for hosting Twitter spaces. And
space within a space.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of spaces.
Russian nested doll of,
So I'm hosting these Twitter spaces, just talking to artists. And this was my first time having 30 plus minute, 10 plus minute conversation with any artist. And we would talk for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours about everything. I got hooked early on with adventure photography. Mm-hmm. That was something that I'm not very athletic. I'm not very outdoorsy. I'm not a lumberjack. I would never go to remote glaciers and remote places and do crazy shit out in the wilderness for 7 to 14 days by myself.
Let's go to JFK right now. Let's do that. Let's do it.
Let's take the podcast.
Listening to these stories, one of the first pieces I collected is a piece of composite photography from Capsum Art. She's up deep in a fucking cavern, that she's staying in overnight by herself with a week's worth of food, getting airdropped in by a helicopter. It's fucking Bear Grylls shit. And I wouldn't have connected with it just seeing it on Instagram. It's a beautiful piece, but like I didn't have that connection until hearing the story. So then I start talking to more of these, I would say like psychedelic, trippy artists like Killer Acid and Pop Wonder and these other artists, and hearing more about their processes, their experiences sold me on the art. So then it was more like, well, I'm not just moved by the piece, but I'm also moved by the story behind the piece or the artist's whole life story.
And I will say this, I so much agree with these, and I will say this, and again, I don't know because we don't know about the MFA shows and all these things, and I get that, but I will say having social media does make it easier for us to connect with an artist. And this is something my wife talked about. She said in the past, in art history, that piece is very uncommon because a lot of times either you were collecting art from artists who are dead, right? Or you had to be in a specific financial situation to collect the art, to meet the artist. And now you're kind of in this, and Instagram is sort of the same thing, Bardo, who made my painting that I'll show, I think I showed you, me and my daughter, he, I got to become friends with him. And I think that a lot of the artists that we were friends with, we have on this podcast, that to me is a moment in an art renaissance or art history that's very special. And I think that that's something that is to look at. That's part of the technology. And I think the digital art renaissance doesn't just have to be about the tech. It's about how we're getting to this part. And that includes social media, and that includes all those things.
And you're hitting on like the salons, you're thinking about Gertrude Stein and the Medici. And it's like art patronage traditionally did care about the artist in some sense. I mean, now with like, I don't want us to go into every topic under the sun, but we're now in a time like there's another podcast called Death of an Artist. Did you listen to this? It's great, but it's everybody in the art world listened to it, from artists up to the top. And it questioned, like, do we care about who the artist was as a person? Like, if you're a genius, are you a genius if you were a bad person? And it covers, there's a famous, the spark notes here is there was a famous art couple, Carl Andre, the conceptual artist, and Ana Mendieta, who is this Cuban-American artist. And something happened one night, but she ended up getting pushed out of a window and died. And he was there. So he allegedly murdered her, but his work still sell for millions of dollars. Wow. And so this art historian and curator went back and basically interviewed everyone in the art market to ask, like, do you care that he might have been a bad guy? And what does genius mean? And so we're in a not new, but I think we're having a moment of, do I care who the artist is? Do I love their art? Or do I kind of not want to know Picasso was a horrible person? Do I care that Picasso was a philanderer and, alcoholic, maybe abusive? Or do I not really care because I want to enjoy his art?
Right, because you want a Picasso.
But I think but we're all thinking about it now. So I think that in your space, you guys are in our same moment.
That we've had, and not to name names, but we've had artists come to our space because they weren't able to sell art in the traditional art space. They felt shut out. Well, they were shut out because of whatever various reasons of allegations.
Red flags.
And then they became very famous here. And, there's questions. And again, allegations, I'm not saying are true or not. That's not the point. And it wasn't just one. It was a few. But they kind of reinvented themselves. But they were you got to speak to them because you were talking to them. And, when things allegation came out for any of them, they're like, well, they weren't true. And it's a very fascinating moment, though, to be able to actually be one-on-one with an artist. Yeah. And I think that's really good.
Well, and you get to see how they act, too.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If the allegation may or may not be true, you get to see their sustained true self
and how
over time and how they act. And then you can make whatever inference you want as a collector.
To go back to the royalty thing, in your world, you better like the guy because you're going to be paying him every time you sell. So in our world, it's a little bit like, I don't have to like him. I'm never going to help him benefit. In your world, you better like him because you're paying his bills.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna wait. Do you want to say something, Avi? Or sorry?
No, no, I'm okay. No, I was going to say it's interesting because to me, I work on developing the careers of young artists. That's always been a particular interest. And you're meeting people at a really formative moment, and you're developing very strong relationships with them. I've lent people money to buy properties so they can build a studio, or I'm always sponsoring studios in which artists are physically working for a year because artists can't afford it, and doing these kinds of things which are pivotal at these particular moments. And, I, like the rest of us, try to eliminate drama from my life. But I really don't work with anybody that I do not like.
Okay.
Period.
I like that.
And that was, like a very conscious decision that was made a long time ago. So it's sort of funny hearing that, hearing what you said, because, if someone, anyone who knows me well, but if anyone, I'm telling you that if it's like someone that I'm working with, or I've worked with for 5 years or 10 years, you can assume that we're best friends. We're running around holding hands and milling lumber together, doing all the things that lumberjack friends do.
Yeah,
exactly.
You want to mill lumber and chop wood together.
The idea of sort of being indifferent to an artist's personality is like crazy to me. This is separate from the reconsideration of art and the personality of the
All right, so we're gonna play a little game now. Is everybody ready? Okay, before we end here. This is Jeopardy. I am going to show everybody some art. It may or may not be digital art or an NFT. Okay. Don't know what the price is or what it's sold out or where it's shown. Some of it may be fine art. Some may be digital art. So you're going to have to let us know, all of you. I know, obviously. Samantha might know some of them. Deeze will know some, but so obviously really do. No, we're gonna do. I'm just putting. Okay. I mix them all together. Okay. So I'm gonna start off by showing some of these things, and again, don't. This isn't like about. Obviously,
this is so exciting.
Yeah.
I don't know what Redbeard's listed.
Yeah. I'm gonna show you some things, and so this is not about saying like.
I just hope we're about to get rickrolled. That's
yeah. He's actually. And again, this is like, don't worry about telling us how your personal thoughts. If it's something like, you don't have to like tear anything apart, but like, let's be honest. So we're going to start with this piece here, okay?
Does anyone have a financial interest in any of these works?
Probably, but don't worry about that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
let me just
make sure.
Depending on what he's showing, I probably own art from some of the artists.
Yeah, I think we probably have art from a lot of them also. Okay, so I'm going to show you this piece first.
Getting Trevi Fountain vibes. So are we supposed to guess if it's digital?
First, I would like you to tell me what you think, if it's digital or physical. And then would you tell me if trad art and NFT?
Not to lawyer you here, but natively could it be a photograph of something that's real, like physical, or could it's like
was that 3D modeled in Blender, or was that hand sculptured? Is that what we're trying to define?
An image of a hand sculpture as opposed to right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Can we get closer to it?
Yeah, sure.
Give us the laptop, Benny.
Yeah, exactly.
Get in there.
I think that's digital.
I agree.
What would you think of that piece?
What is the format? Like, how are we
on your MacBook Air, or in Rome in person?
In Rome in person. If that was like,
but I think it's I don't think.
I think it's digital also. I think it's digital. I think it's digital also.
My only way of enjoying this is on a screen.
I would agree.
Well,
with that
again,
assumption.
I'm not giving you a high-end screen, which is unfortunate, because remember, if this was like playing in a really nice, on a nice screen, you get a better perspective of it.
Like art historically analyzing this, I think if this is a digital work, I can appreciate like the interplay between it's trying to be something that's kind of like Renaissance Italian, but I think it's also clearly not, because like that is not, they didn't do loving children like that. They did either scared or powerful children, so that just doesn't feel correct but I think that I like the mixing of mediums. I like that it's meant to be like stone and physical, but if it's something that's actually more portable, it's interesting.
Do you ever hear the game God of War?
No. I've heard of it, but
okay. So it's a very famous game. This artist, his name is Raf Garcetti. He's one of the top video game artists in the world.
I could see that.
And he's very famous, and now he makes fine digital art. This is one of his pieces.
Cool.
Would you, if I had to tell you what you think it would cost to buy that, do you want to?
In US dollars or in some sort of like made up
US dollars. Okay. Like just get rid of Ethereum and just US dollar
value.
This is
hard because like I don't know what is the average price of a give me like a good, like in the art world, a good work.
He's considered, I would say. Oh, that's just probably Brian.
Is that the pizza?
The green button.
Just a second. 1 second.
He just interrupted us instead of sending a text.
Be six figures, mid fives, low, like high fours. things like that sometimes.
I mean, having this be like a purely fantastical game because like I actually work in the market and we're very careful about how we value things. So if this is just like a total spitball, like what, 25,000, 30,000?
Who cares?
I mean, that's okay. Good answer. I mean, we're playing the game. Playing the game.
But this is me playing the game.
Fair enough.
No. But I mean,
what is this, like performance art for you now?
No, not at all. Watch. $1 million. I don't know.
That's not fun.
Hold that. Hold that thought. Ready?
No. But
hold that thought. Yeah. Okay. What do you think?
This is why he asked me to come.
What? Know? Yes, it is.
He wanted me to be.
God. What do you think of this?
No comment.
Yeah, I was going to say pass.
No, wait, hold on. Yeah.
This is funny.
Yeah.
I also own
Deeze, did you make that?
I own 4 of them.
This is lucky bastard.
This is going to be the most valuable round.
Let me tell you that before Deeze starts, I want to tell you the name of this. This is a collection called Crypto Dick Butts. Okay?
Oh, I see it now. I didn't see it before, but now I see it.
Deeze, now can you explain Crypto Dick Butts?
I don't know how I can explain it. So they are a very NFT-centric collection. This was born out of the Punks Discord, which is already the pixel art. And the people made a whole story about how they're from Gooch Island, and it became this like cult classic. So how much do you think in US dollars the cheapest there's how many dick cuts? 4,200.
What does a CryptoPunk go for now?
A CryptoPunk right now is I think 66 ETH. ETH is $1,600. So I mean around 100K, like a little under 100K for.
How much do you think this would go for?
Then I'm gonna say I think CryptoPunks are still really like probably more valuable.
Yes,
than
they're the
highest.
Yes.
So if that's like 100K, then this is maybe like 20. I'm gonna go back to 20, 15, 20.
Little lower.
This is about 5,000.
Yeah, 5,000 is the cheapest.
The cheapest one.
What a steal!
Yeah.
Now they have different.
Yeah.
They have different hats.
Okay with cash?
Hold on.
I don't think they take cash.
Hold on. Sometimes they have different hats and different things.
Yeah, so is this one like not the most rare?
No. That's not the most rare. That's a floor. That would be called a floor dick butt.
Wait, how about the other one though? What was the other one worth?
The other one?
Yeah.
That Corsetti is probably worth like probably 45K. Okay.
We're talking like value today, basically.
Today. Yeah, probably
Today's
like 40
value.
to 45.
Today's value.
Okay, hold on. Here's the next one. What do you think?
We got a Bloomberg terminal up here.
What do you think of this?
Is that also a dick butt one?
I'm more interested.
Penny.
Okay.
CryptoPunk floor is 111,000, by the way.
Okay.
This is my favorite thing that you've shown so far.
This is your favorite thing I've showed you.
Definitely.
This is a real life crypto dick butt.
Yeah.
Made by Beeple.
Nice.
Okay.
Is that Beeple's dick?
It could be Beeple's dick. We don't know. It's
I can't
very
believe
possible.
you picked that one. Third one. I did not.
What?
Well, you know, I mean,
Benny is really starting this off on a weird foot.
No.
Like,
I mean, one of the reasons I like it is because actually it feels a little bit more connected to art history. It feels a little bit more like an original design.
I want you to know, Avi. This was my argument.
You know?
No, hold on. This is my argument.
Reminds me of Lucian Freud.
This is my.
Who's a very famous 20th century artist.
This is my argument.
Is that a disservice to?
It is. That's a little.
I thought this was Beeple's best piece he ever made. I thought it was his most artistic piece.
We have a lot in common.
Right? See?
Clearly
This is why we get along.
SPF
this has
jail
not
cell.
been sold yet.
But
But
one of the things I like about it is that I know it's digital art. It's not pretending to be something that it
correct.
is not, you know. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not offering you any of the crypto I don't have to buy it.
Yeah.
But it's more interesting to me than the previous two. You know, like the first one you said, what do you think of this piece? And we were still unsure if it were digital or were physical. So if it were physical, I would say to you, I can't judge it unless I see it in person. Like this is something I'm always telling trad art collectors is you can look at the picture on the screen, but you need to go see it in person. If you don't see it in person, you can't get a real feel for it. And it sounds really trite, but
100%.
I do feel it's the case.
Look at blue monochrome in person versus on Google.
What was that?
Look at blue monochrome in person versus on Google. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, so for the first piece, it's like, well, okay, you know, if it might be real, I need to see it in person before I can give a judgment. For the second one, passing. And the third one, I mean, like I said,
we have more. Hold on.
grotesque.
I'm not
Keep
done.
going.
You gotta go to something better than a real life dick.
Can I take us from lowbrow to highbrow for a second?
Sure.
Just for after that, I feel like a
Want to
palate
talk about
cleanser.
Lucian Freud?
palate
No,
cleanser.
but I, you know, this is me personally, not in my job, but me personally, when I look at art after like a career in the art market, in auction especially, I tend to put art into 3 different buckets. It's the stuff that I just love and want to live with.
Yeah.
And it could be like cruise ship art. It could be a Hallmark card. I just like looking at it. No other consideration.
Like that cruise ship art.
Then there's the stuff that I think art historically is so interesting
Yeah.
and like I can get behind it from a philosophical perspective. And then there's the shit I just want to sell. Like it's blue, it's good. And sometimes
we are
there's
so much
art
more alike than in
the three. There's
Absolutely.
like a perfect Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's two and sometimes it's one. But like that's how I tend to like I'll go to a museum and be like, this is all three or this is one of them. Or
I'm just curious, do you buy stuff for yourself or hang in your home stuff for yourself that might be offensive to other people, or the sort of stuff that people would
it's
say?
not that offensive. But
Yeah, well, I mean, that doesn't offend me.
No, but like I will buy stuff that
not pretty.
I'm not. I'll go to an art fair. Like I loved NADA this year. I thought NADA was way better than the main fair. And
Yeah,
I'll go to
NADA is
NADA and be like, I'm not sure I would tell a client to buy this unless I knew their taste, but like I love this.
Yeah.
And I think considering where in the market I occupy, like I think it's good that I like stuff that isn't necessarily worth a lot of money. And I think there's enough of us who, keep the world honest that way.
Yeah,
But,
Nada was very good.
guys
This year. A
ready?
lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
What do you think of this?
It kind of looks like, it looks like it could be like traditional photography, meaning it was like double exposed. And it looks like it could be like almost like a chromogenic print that got double developed.
Yeah, looks like something that my fictional uncle might take and then play with because he started to learn Photoshop.
I'm trying to think of the name of the artist, but I'm getting like a little bit of like when Rauschenberg did that, where he like superimposed and.
Do you like this, Deeze?
I need to see it closer.
This is actually in the Guggenheim.
Yeah, this looks right.
This is a trad piece of art, just so you know.
Who made that?
That is by Peter Fischley and David Weiss.
By the way, there's plenty of trad art that I don't care for.
I'm not saying to care about it.
100%.
That's not the game here. This is.
But so let me ask you, like, if this were minted, how would you respond?
I
to
don't
this?
get a strong feeling when I look at it.
And why? Is that because of it's like a little too analog for you, or?
I'm not someone who typically is big on just like a flower motif.
Oh, so it's more the subject matter, not
the palette of yellow and green with the purple doesn't really do it much for me. I don't really love the graininess of it. I mean,
It might be a bad picture.
Yeah. But like, if I saw that digitally like that, and then I'm like, they put like a noise filter over it or something.
Have you ever seen Stingel's work, Rudolf Stingel? You know, when he did a painting of a photograph of a painting.
Yes, mirror show.
I haven't seen that, but
I should put that up. I should have put that up. Okay.
That would be something. It reminds me of like the Art Blocks project. I mean,
but then,
it's not the Art Blocks project, but fragments of Infinite Field.
Infinite Field.
Where I looked at it, I'm like, that kind of looks like wallpaper. Like I don't want to buy it. And then I watched it go from $1,000 to $40,000.
Are you guys ready?
Did you like it then?
No, still didn't like it.
Are you guys ready? Yeah.
We're ready.
What do you think of this?
Oh, you got to get close.
Yeah,
Pull that one close.
Looks like an artist I work with.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time judging art on a screen. So it could be digital.
To be
it could
fair,
be
I'm
real.
sorry. That's true. I get that.
No, it could be digital. It could be real.
We're gonna get sponsored by a display
right
company
next time, and then have.
No, look, do you know the artist Mark Rothko?
Yes.
Okay, so right. Okay, well, I never really cared for Rothko that much. Yeah. I never really
in
cared.
person.
No, in person. No.
You just lost all credibility.
No. Well, I think the point is, and I used to say this to people all the time, for me, I'd rather have a Rembrandt than a Rothko.
Right. Okay.
So I will connect it to the art market. When people were spending $80 million on Rothkos, when people started spending $80 million on Rothkos, that soiled it a little bit for me, unfortunately. But, and this is the part where maybe I can be redeemed, I went to the Rothko Chapel in Houston, right? A long time ago. And it's a non-denominational chapel that he designed and was built, in the 80s, 70s? Can't remember. And, there's a series of black, purpley paintings on the wall. And there's...
Yes. I've seen him in person, luckily.
And I was blown away. I was fucking blown away. And I grew up in New York, we have a very different art history background. I have no formal background in schools, but I'm self-taught by going to the Met and going to the MoMA and going to the New Museum and going to galleries, et cetera, et cetera. I knew who Rothko was. I'd seen dozens of Rothkos, even know some Rothko owners who are clients. I was blown away. So, I mean, I just, it does nothing for me on the screen. You know?
Yeah, so I feel like this piece in particular, you need to know a little bit
so why don't
more
you tell them
about the artist.
So it is actually a digital piece of art. And
so this artist is very well known for incorporating a blue background with like a darker foreground with bright reds in it. And after TJO, and after kind of blowing up, kind of over like a year or two of just grinding, he made that piece, which was just the background, just a background, not like the background. He doesn't use that background on every piece, but it's a very similar vibe. And like that was his highest sale by far. It didn't have any subject matter. None of the reds that he's known for. It was just the background. But he did something where he made it CC0 so that anyone could take it and use it. And it spawned a bunch of derivatives where people take that gradient and just blast it over their stuff, and it's become this kind of mimetic blue color in our society, in our little society.
Which is funny because Yves Klein blue was like copyright and trading. You know, it's like you can't use that blue. So it's actually interesting. They have like an almost perfect one-to-one thing that. You know.
I have more. You ready? It's gonna be fun. I have some
you have to
ones.
do some of the traditional ones though too.
I did.
Okay.
I just did.
No, one of mine. I want to see if you guys.
Okay.
Oh, everybody.
I gave him some what I thought would be interesting to see.
I'm gonna get to those.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you 2 videos and I'm gonna go back to some physics.
I was like, if we're gonna be made to look like idiots, then they got.
You're not gonna. No, not at all. Okay, ready?
I don't think you could be made to look like an idiot. Yeah.
I mean, he's the one who showed us dick butts as 2 and 3. Like I didn't.
I'm gonna just play 2 videos for you. I want you to watch them in entirety. Okay.
How long is this?
Make sure you put the laptop in front of their faces.
This is video number 1.
You
should watch.
Throw the laptop over here.
Is there sound?
No.
Oh, there's no sound?
Yeah. Do you see it, Deeze?
There's some parkour going on.
Did you watch that?
I think so.
Now I'm gonna show you another video.
Do you want to kill the Prime Minister of Malaysia now?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Yeah, I do.
I know it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Ready? I'm going to ask you a question now. Which one of those is in the MoMA?
Second one.
Second one.
The first one.
Really?
Second one is an artist named James Joe Pease, and he makes fascinating videos like this. Mm-hmm. The first one is by Stephanie Jameson. It's called Escaped Lunatic.
When was it made?
Hers was made in 2011, and Joe made this about a year ago.
Have you been, or are you involved in video art?
Not really.
Yeah.
I have some friends who have worked in like performance art, but no, it's not really within our market.
Yeah.
Now that's not to take away from either of them, but
no, it just.
With that said, like one thing I was thinking about, like the history of digital art in our space was like Namjoon Paik in the 70s and video art then, which I think would resonate with them because there was like a generative he was this artist who worked with TVs. And so his work would be like huge sculptures made entirely of Samsung TVs. But one of his most famous works is, I think it's called TV Buddha. And it's like a Buddha sitting in front of a TV with a security camera. And so as you walk around it, you kind of change the work. But it was like in my mind, that's one of the first examples of like digital into our space. Yeah. That I feel like you guys would connect with. And
that'd be cool.
So Joe is one of my favorite artists.
He's one of the most unique artists in our space.
That's cool.
And
he's someone who came out, I think he was originally selling pieces for a few $1,000. And now...
So this is a good one, though, to also keep in mind. Like, that piece at MoMA might not really sell for that much money. Like, that's not...
Right.
So you just kind of extricate...
Correct. And again, it's not... And just like you said, though, it's not always just about the price.
What does the second one sell for?
Now he probably sells for about, 40 to 50 Ether, Will?
50,000.
50,000, Joe? He's one
Yeah,
to one.
he's one of the most, I would say,
And
sought after
I would,
creators,
and he's looking to, like, and I would say, but I think what's interesting is that, though, it's not just about the money. I'm curious, with somebody like that who made this digital art, who's in the NFT space, but his art is fantastic. It's like, well, that could go in
it's timely. It does feel from like a surveillance state perspective, and like there's a lot in there that I think.
Okay, so I'm going to show you two more pieces when you're ready. Oh no, go. What are you going to say?
No, I had asked Samantha about video art because I've always had a lot of trouble with video art and never really responded to it that much, with a few exceptions. I do tend to like stuff that's a little bit more narrative driven. So that's the sort of thing that I'm going to respond to. Exactly. And the stuff that's highly conceptual, highly challenging is stuff that I've always had a very hard time with.
Yeah.
And I would say I can speak for the general public when it comes to that. When a lot of people go to, a museum and there's a very complex, very long video piece. They don't know what to make of it.
Well, they're excited they get to sit for a second. That's what they
Yes,
do.
I was about to say.
I get to sit. It's dark.
I was about to say. It's so funny you said that. I was about to say the one thing that people do like is like if they have kids, is they can take a little nap. So sometimes I'll nap in those rooms if there's a comfy chair. So funny.
They have that room that it's like just one big cushion, and so you just kind of like go into a comfy house.
Yeah.
You guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. These, you should look at this one.
I've read the book.
You did?
Yeah. I listened to it on Audible, if that counts.
So you want Samantha? You want to tell us what this is?
Yeah, you know what this is, right?
I know what this is.
Everyone knows what it is. All right. Do you know what it is?
No. Yeah.
Okay, so it's Damien Hirst.
Well, it could be a digitized version.
Well, that's what I was hoping would stump them a little bit. So I was like, that could be like it. Also, to me, so it's Damien Hirst. The Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Who's Living, I think is the full title.
Sounds right.
And the vitrine to me looks like the Beeple one that he just did with the moon guy walking around. And so that's why I was kind of like, oh, that's an interesting. But this, one of the reasons I love this piece, it's so Damien Hirst was a YBA, which when they came out were kind of
British
this like,
artist,
right, thank you, were like revolutionary in their approach, like Tracy Emin using the words and the light. And one thing that's cool about this one, which you know all about, is that the shark ended up like decomposing over time, which again, I think like when I was thinking about this, I was like, that's kind of like the generative art that the environment changed things. And then in the art world, it was this great question about when you replace the shark, is it the same piece? And I think in your world, as things change and generate, like it is the same piece, and you've got some of the same questions.
Did this piece sell for anything?
So it was commissioned for like I think 200,000, and then it sold to a large collector for like between 8 and 12 million is where. And there's a great book called The $12 Million Stuffed Shark. That
What do you think of this piece?
So that also looks like that's a Damien Hirst spot painting, but it's messier. So I can't remember if you. This is actually. Is this from the? Never mind. I'm gonna stop talking. So I'm not positive.
No, I was gonna say the same thing. It looks it looks like a wannabe Damien Hirst.
His are.
It'd be like more like a Dan Colin almost.
Right.
You know?
Like I was gonna say, it's not tight enough, but his most recent show with the cherry blossoms, I think, was a little bit looser. So
this is actually a Damien Hirst NFT that he created.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you see any of the video from that?
It's called Currency.
And everything?
Yes. So this is one of them, and you could either burn it to get the physical or the digital copy.
You can't have both. That's the whole
Can't have
thing.
both.
Make
So
a choose.
I'm curious, like you talked about earlier, like there were artists who left our world and went to your world and found great success. Do you think that the artists that, for example, like Urs Fischer or Damien Hirst, does anyone care about them in your world?
Yeah,
a ton of people.
Actually, his floor on Currency is on Damien Hirst. On Currency is probably around like 10,000. 43, so it's about $10,000.
But there's 10,000 of them too.
Like Brad,
and he has a lot. We bought like we own 2 of them, I believe. Like we actually didn't burn for physicals in the end. We just have them. I don't even know which wallet we have.
Well, but I think that's smart because I'm not sure what a physical would
so
even
interesting.
sell for.
Fascinating. My wife wanted me to burn one because she's like, "Well, when's the next time to get a Damien Hirst physical?" My argument was like, "Well, I'll put it on a really digital screen and you'll have a physical. What's the difference?" You know.
And what about Urs Fischer? Because when he was like, I think the first time our world.
Not as much. I think Damien Hirst really took it upon himself to really understand the community. The way I see it is that Damien Hirst, and again, I'm not a historian like you guys at all, but he's sort of like the top cycle of what, let's say, Warhol started, right, with the art and fame and sort of like, he's the richest living artist and everything he's kind of doing. And or he was.
He's doing fine still.
He's doing fine. Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
And then
I lose sleep.
Yeah, and exactly. And then I think it's interesting because the same way that Warhol sort of saw this, like, okay, we need to have this sort of new movement and what he was building. It's to me was so interesting is Hearst, who's top of his game, top of the field. He kind of made this transition into the NFT space or the digital art space. And he kind of sees it as like a new medium. He's like, okay, wait, there's more money to be made here. Obviously, he cares about making money, but that's part of the world. And he kind of made that transition and still does digital art, but he's very big. He has a community. People are in his Discord.
Well, I think the thing that was important was he
with them.
used the technology in a way that enabled him to do something that he couldn't do with his traditional art. He was forcing his collectors to make a decision. You can either keep this natively digital, and I'm going to burn your physical, or you can make this, you could burn your token and get the physical. And I think like people using the tech to do something different,
Agreed.
like the big people from Trad Art, that is the stuff that excites us.
Yes,
We're like,
agreed.
oh shit, like this guy's looking at our space and like he's understanding that like this is what the tech affords him to do. And he's not just like, here's a thing I made that's physical and buy the NFT.
He was trying something new. And I think that the community bought into that.
Tom Sachs is another good example.
Tom Sachs is a great example. His Rockets really.
It's funny. I was gonna say like Hearst in the traditional art market like is a little bit of a polarizing artist.
Agreed.
I think Tom Sachs is like universally
likes
adored.
And Tom comes to like I've met him a bunch of times. He comes to all the NFT events and digital art events, and I think his Rockets really were sort of like that perfect and then he made the physical ones and
launch it. It's an experience. You go watch your launch. Get back.
I definitely think he's doing that. All right, I'm gonna show you two pictures now. Okay, we're almost done, but we're gonna get there. Okay, two in a row.
Your all day.
We're having fun. Okay, ready? So you have this one and this one. So when you go back, you can look at this one first and then look at the other.
Yeah, get close with these ones.
I think there's a Daniel Rich show at Miles McHenry right now. It's like I'm old. I'm like I got to take off my glasses to really get in there. Okay.
What are your thoughts on those two paintings?
Are they paintings?
I don't know.
They could be digital paintings.
Digital paintings. I said paintings.
Digital painting means
No. I was just saying. But
Okay.
what do you think of those two pieces of art?
Yeah.
You can be honest.
I like that one better.
You like this
The
one
second
better.
one.
Yeah. So this is one photographer, one artist. His name is Grant River Young. This was an original, very very early piece. This is his later pieces that he started doing. This piece sold for about $30,000, $40,000.
I mean, his most recent piece sold for like 69 ETH, which was like 70.
That was his highest. Yeah. So, but his art, which is,
it's called Neo Precisionism or something.
yeah, he renamed it. So I think he made that.
If you do it
up.
well, you get to decide what it's called. Yeah.
What do you like about the second one better than the first?
I didn't say I like the second one better. That was Samantha, but I just have such a hard time looking at this stuff and making a decision because assuming it's digital, I have like de-romanticized the process so much in my own mind that it's hard to get turned on. For me, such a big part of my love for the art scene is the process, which has been romanticized for hundreds of years. So it's sort of hard to look at this stuff because in my mind, there's, all these things going on and I just see someone with like a $6,000 Mac and like 9 screens creating something, which could be really interesting and could have longevity, et cetera, et cetera. But
do you think
it's hard for me to get excited about it.
Do you think that takes away from the process that they're doing?
I don't think it takes away from the process. It's just one of the reasons why I haven't been attracted at this point.
You're articulating something that I've said a lot to you, which is, and in the traditional art space, like when I talk to collectors or go to these events, and they're like, "Well, you're not into NFTs, right?" And I, fight the good fight for you. And though I don't collect them, I think that it's another medium. So like, I don't collect textiles or ceramics, but I like paintings. But there are some people who have an exclusively textile ceramic. So I think I see it as. It's not necessarily for me because I'm also like a tactile process person, but I don't think that makes it lesser than. I think it's just
agree.
another medium.
I
All right,
agree.
I'm going to show you 2 videos again. You guys ready? Okay. They're 12 seconds long. This is the first one.
You get close to that too.
And the videos might not do it justice, but yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a lot better on a 30-foot screen in Miami
Yeah.
on the beach.
I also have a lava lamp.
On mushrooms, yeah.
And then I'm going to show you this one.
This looks familiar.
Who's that guy that takes photos? He like drops pigments into like things of water. What's his name? Kim
Okay.
Fever.
At the Venice Biennale, didn't somebody do like a water tank that moved like that?
These are both digital artists. The first one is Rafik Anadol, who actually has that. I don't think it's that piece, but a piece just like that in a huge screen right now at the Met.
Cool.
And the second one is Jesse Wilston, also very similar. It's not exactly the same artist, but similar idea.
Yeah.
These are all coded. This is all painstakingly hours and hours and hours of writing code.
So is that like computer generated then?
But it's not just computer generated. There's AI involved.
Yeah.
It's also coding that they have to do, and
Rafik's is very AI based.
Rafik is a little bit more AI based than Jesse. Jesse, who actually makes more of the code himself. Jesse, this one, his whole idea is that he's actually going to be able to mimic the entire ocean digitally. Its movements, its waves. He puts these on screens that are in Asia that are, 75 feet long, 75 feet high.
Like a crossing outside in Japan somewhere?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly.
what
That
I'm
was
thinking of.
Jesse. And Rafik has been more in the modern art space recently, especially now. He's been around for a while also, but both really, really insanely, I would say, smart artists.
So I want to ask you another question. So we are like grappling with an identity crisis in the traditional art market, which is like immersive art experiences.
Yes.
That's getting like dangerously close into like the immersive Van Gogh or the Klimt that's on now. How do you see those things? Or do you see that as like natively digital and therefore it's like right up your alley?
I
Do you
think
see
it's
that
both.
as derivative?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like when I went and experienced Rafik's work in person at Art Basel in
amazing.
2021, it hit me 5 orders of magnitude more than looking at on the fucking screen. And it was like, wow, this is how it's meant to be. Like I'm on the beach, I can feel the sand between my toes. I can hear the waves like crashing into the beach, but I'm looking at this giant screen. I have a video of it on my phone. I'll pull it up. It's one of the most surreal
it's
like
really
art
those-
experiences.
We should go to JFK now.
Yeah.
Take you to a real beach.
Yeah, but I do agree with, seeing Rafik art in person is monumental. Seeing Jesse's art in person is monumental.
Is it always large scale?
Both of them are usually almost in large scale.
So how does that impact the collectability of it?
So when you get them on smaller screens, the way the ones that they usually sell look fantastic. I mean, part of the process here, I'm not going to lie, is that we're going to need better screens.
Yes.
And I know that that's something that the hardware is being built, but like it's happening.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to let you guys go, but I have a few more that are really important. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 pieces now. Okay, you guys ready?
Pick the outputs.
Sorry.
You picked 2 floors.
So I think they're both digital, just because I don't recognize either artist. They both look like the sort of thing that I might see later today. This reminds me of an architect turned artist, and also a little bit of Jeff McFetridge.
I'm
he's a
thinking like
contemporary artist.
kinetic, like Latin American kinetic art.
Yeah.
And that I'm getting like kind of derivative Mondrian Kandinsky vibes,
Okay.
but not in like a. I don't love these.
Yeah.
I need my laptop ripped.
I think they're both digital because I don't recognize the style or the work
Yeah.
instantly, and it's the sort of thing that we've both seen 1,000 times. So
Yeah.
I think one of us would probably recognize.
So let me ask you this question: do you think you said this? And I think this is interesting. You said it looks like something you might see later.
Yeah, it's not. These are not styles that are out of favor at the moment. So I'm going to galleries later today while I'm down here on the Lower East Side. So that's what I meant by that. Yeah.
All right. So these are two generative artists. Deeze says I picked the floor, so they're not the best ones. So to be fair,
So I feel like
What does it mean you picked the floor?
So I'll let Deeze tell you about.
So
these
like
two
both
artists.
of those collections are Ringers and Fidenza.
Ringers is Dimitri Cherniak, and Fidenza is Tyler Hobbs.
Yeah, and Fidenza's the flow field looking one that you said might look like Kandinsky, and the other one that has the pegs with the strings is Ringers. And to me, the marvel around them is that these artists wrote code that they deployed, and they had no control of the individual outputs. They could run that algorithm a million times and get different outputs every time, but they let us, the people who minted them or bought them, get into the experience. And the way that those are generated is it takes the hash of our transaction when we mint the art, and it generates it based off that hash. So all of those were not like hand selected or picked by the generative artist. They just put the code out and they're like, whatever 1,000 we get. Like they controlled the variables and like, but they can't control the outputs. So when you look at those in the series of 1,000 together, it'll hit a lot more than just a one-off, because you don't really understand, I think, like the context of, you know, what is this? But when you see 1,000 Ringers or 10 Ringers or 10 Fidenza or 1,000 Fidenza, it makes, I think, more sense. I'd like to show you the collection as a whole. I think it would make a lot more sense.
That needs context, is what you're
saying.
like
I need my laptop.
Can you pull up one of mine? Because it's...
Yeah, which one?
The one that has like green and...
This one?
Yeah. Do you know what this is?
Deeze, take a look.
Look at this.
No.
Surprise! And it could be digital, it could be real, it could be like, I also picked...
Or like dominoes? Or... It looks like just a bunch of candy on the floor in a rectangle.
If you have any listeners who know traditional art, what you just said, they'll know what it is.
Exactly. I don't even think I've ever seen this.
Okay, and what did you think? What do you think?
I thought it was like a moss thing first, and they got closer. I thought it was candy.
So this is Felix Gonzalez Torres. Okay. So now you probably know who this is. So he was a kind of conceptual artist, and he did these works. This one was made in 1991. The full art historical background, it was in the context of the AIDS crisis, and he had lost his partner, I think the year he did this or the year before. And he does these works that are all candy based, and they are either lines or piles, and they're different colored candy, and they're always an ideal weight. Some of them are the weight of his partner at the time that he passed away. And the idea is that you walk into this gallery and you take as much candy as you want. You want 1, you want 10, you take handfuls of it. And as it's displayed, it changes shape from people kind of picking away at it. Yeah. But the reason it's candy, and he did different types of candy, is that he wanted you to share in kind of the sweetness and the joy of the love he felt.
That's utility.
And but so every day that gets replenished. So if you go to MoMA or Met and there's one, you're meant to interact with it. And so it's, I would argue, in your definition, it's generative art in the sense that you're going to change it from interacting.
Interesting. And because it keeps changing.
And you could walk into the Met when they had one a few years ago. Every day you went, it looked a little different, because some people would be tentative and not take any candy. Some people would take, I took handfuls, but it changes shape over time.
So you would never, can't buy that and put it in your house.
You can buy it. And
the final
so
output?
This is the other part of it that I think connects to your world. We have a whole art movement where the certificate is the art. So when I first heard about NFTs, I said, I know what this is. It's conceptual art, where it's all away. It's, it's artists that just basically wrote out what it meant to, it's your certificate describing it.
Was on a piece of paper rather than on the blockchain.
Exactly. And so, but that was our original blockchain. And so Felix Gonzalez Torres, it's the same thing, where it describes how you should lay it out, what the candy is. You can buy more candy from their studio, but that's our version of the blockchain. Or I have another one in there. That's another conceptual artist where it is what it says it is, and you can make as many as you want. You can reprint them, which kind of sounds like a forgery, but it's not in this specific context.
So
I have to show them.
Yeah, you show them that, and I'll get some more up.
So here's the collection of Fidenza. And you can scroll down. There's 999 there. So you don't have to go through all of them, but like at least you want to see a few to kind of get a range of these outputs rather than just.
So this is all code.
This is all the same contract.
This is art blocks that we talk.
So how much control is there in the human element? Like you're sitting there coding, can you be like code it into green background and pink spots and whatever? Or
so
how
it's
much,
basically
like,
giving
agency?
like a bunch of variables. So like they have different weights. Like certain palettes might be weighted differently. Like you're going to see that green palette repeated a lot, and you're going to see the Fidenza palette repeated a lot. The Fidenza is the one with like maybe like a light blue background. But then you'll see some rarer ones that are like the red one right there.
But so could you make them rarer? As
No.
It's all random.
Well, the coders are like the artist is who sets the rarity in the sense because they're saying like this palette should have this weight.
There was like a one that Dimitri did that looked like a goose, but it was just by accident.
Yeah, that one came out like a goose. It sold for a few $1 million. I'll pull it up.
So how do you intervene in these? Like what is the code part of it? Like you walk me through this one.
So when you mint,
do you get this?
Yeah. When you mint,
I don't get any of
So
it.
the artist creates the algorithm. Artist creates the code, and it's just
like zeros and ones. We're talking here.
I mean, not zeros and ones. It's like a lot of math. Like
but inevitably it's zeros and ones.
I can pull up like it's
So then how did you, because like you don't get that image, you get that code and then you do something with it.
No.
Okay.
No, we're interacting with the code. But when I wish I could mint something to just show her how it works.
It's like
the way it works is like
Do I get to keep it if you make it?
yes. Oh, you get to keep it. We're going to do one where we don't get to keep it. But the way it would work is this item is on art blocks, right? And we would connect our wallet and we would buy one. And at the time, they were like $100 or $200.
Yeah.
If we don't know what we're going to get when we buy it, all we know is like
You're
the
gonna get
output
something.
roughly looks like this.
Okay.
And there's like a test net where you can kind of see like some previous outputs, but you don't know what you're getting when you buy it. And you literally like when I click this generate Fidenza button, this is basically what happens when you mint it. But instead of it, like it's going to generate a random hash here. But if I minted it on chain, it would actually take the transaction hash of my transaction.
So there's kind of two markets here. There's the one where you're minting them, and then there's one where you're trading the ones that have already been minted.
Yes.
Okay. So it's like primary.
And it's a lot more addicting to mint one because you have no idea what you're
and
getting.
that's so you pay originally to generate the generative art.
So I can click generate
Yeah.
and we'll get a new one.
And
That's
it's
ours.
right.
But that's for sale or that's not for
No,
sale?
I just made it.
You just made it.
But so
Like
now
this
it's
one
for
isn't in the collection.
If you want to sell it.
we could generate 1 million of these, but they won't be in that collection of 999.
Okay, so now walk me through the economics. You paid $100 to mint that, and now what? What's it worth?
Well, those are worth.
It's probably the most
floors?
successful art block project.
Yeah.
But now if you keep making them, don't you make the value go down?
But there's only
No,
999. So the
there's only
artist came out
999.
and said there's 999. They mint at this price on this day at this time.
And that's it.
And we all lined up like a bunch of monkeys and just like within 10 minutes we bought all 999 of them. And then they were set.
It was the same thing as the squiggles that Eric Snowfro did. Eric Qualdron. Will minted 30 of those. And now the floor on them is what? They're I think
25K.
Yeah, about $25,000. And you bought them how much? For
$30. They're $30 to mint.
Amazing.
$23.
It's like when I'm with Benny. We've only hung out a couple times. I feel like I'm on planet Mars. Every time.
All right, talk about Planet Mars.
Universe.
I'm going to show you. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
This is ready.
Yeah.
Be honest. Okay, ready? This is a good one.
Wait,
What-
I'm not ready. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Okay. What do you guys think of this?
Is there a relationship to you?
No.
It's not a portrait.
No.
I kind of don't want to get closer to it. Okay.
Yeah. I can't really see. Is he taking it? I can't really...
You know, potentially. I mean, it's serving Hieronymus Bosch.
Yeah.
See, they got it. Okay, so this was made by Deeze and myself.
Yeah.
We made this through AI using Haram. We used Bosch actually.
Like
as
the Garden of Earthly Delights.
Correct.
You unfold-
Yeah.
Except it was for degenerates.
To be fair, the Garden
Do
of
you
Earthly
think-
Delights was already for degenerates. You
Fair,
just-
right? Exactly.
Like instead of a nun.
Do you
kinda
think
like,
and we used all our prompts, different words. We were very careful. Do you think that Deeze and I could be artists?
Well, this is where I disagree with every, seventh grade teacher. I don't think everybody can be an artist, Not a good artist.
And not everything is art.
And not everything is art.
We
Simple answer: not everything is art. No.
Okay.
No.
All right. I'm
I'm a little bit pickier than that. You know.
I'm gonna show you a couple more things, and then we're gonna.
I want to see more of what did you show anything?
Yeah.
I only did one. Come on.
Yeah.
No,
Show some of Samantha's stuff. So what are you working on next? The two of you.
We don't know. We're deciding what to come up with.
Maybe a portrait of
I
Deeze
think
next
I could
time.
We're working on at
Deeze on the beach.
This is yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know this. Maybe not.
Like Merrill Lederman Euclides. I don't know who it is.
And like, can you even tell what it is? Like what each kind of element is?
We have a one clock is at 8:51, and the other clock is at 2:35. There's a lot of math equations with words and italics.
Onquara? Who was that?
When you look at maybe
The definitions aren't doing anything.
Did you have any? You've looked at this.
I cheated.
Amira told you.
I'm not sure it is, but it looks like some mid 20th century conceptual
Yeah, so
artist.
it's Joseph Kassuth. So
Okay.
another artist where these context text works. So it's a photograph of a clock on the same clock that's next to it. So you have to put the clock up first. These are the instructions on the certificate. Put the clock up first, set it to local time, take a picture of the clock, put that picture next to the clock. So that means the time on the picture is the time that the clock was hung. Then there's the definition of machination, object, and time. So it's like a definition of what you're looking at physically and a reproduction of that thing. And the certificate for this, so like our blockchain of this, just describes all those things. The definitions are printed on foam board. He literally said just like print them on something that can be tacked to the wall. So you make it. Like you make it. You're
How
not,
much
You're
is-
buying the
Yeah. What are you
you're
buying?
buying the instructions, which
And how
I
much does
think
the instructions cost to buy?
so there was one sold at Christie's a few years ago, I think, for $300,000. But what's interesting, like I worked with a client that sold one where there was a definition and it was on foam board, and we were like, "Oh, this is worth a lot of money." And then we went to a storage and found the exact same one, and then we're like, "Shit, which one is the real one?" And you go to the studio, and they just
We're supposed to
say,
not tell that story.
no, but it was interesting because their studio is very like the point of it is the description and the idea, and there's a tremendous amount of like agency as the owner to actually create it. And his other stipulation is whatever country you show the art in is the language that the definition has to be in, unless it's English, which you can do anywhere. And so he's like, there's so much in there you could unpack from like an art historical critical perspective of like globalization and what's real and are you the maker, is he the maker, like. And I think again when I was thinking about like what would you guys care about in the art world, like this is from I think 1965, so like way before this was all happening, these ideas were kind of bouncing
they were
around.
like starting, and that's really interesting because like now everybody talks about it in our world like utility.
Yeah.
What am I getting with this art? It's not.
Well, that's interesting too because like with the art block stuff, when you mint it, I feel a lot more attached to it because I minted it. If
Agreed.
I buy one that somebody else minted on secondary,
it definitely
feels
gave it
a lot.
They
different.
gave it such a new experience for a lot of us to be like, oh, because you're interacting with the code and it's
I mean, you're
sort of
interacting
like,
with the code in the sense that, like, you're driving a car, but you
Correct.
don't know how the car
For
works.
sure, but
it's
you're-
not like you're interacting with the code,
But-
like you're
No,
fucking
no,
popping open
right.
the hood and
We're not
changing
changing
out
anything in the
belts and
code,
stuff.
but it's all
like-
random in the sense of that you don't know what you're getting.
Like active participants.
Yeah.
In the,
Yes,
like,
it's-
we're not art. I mean, like, I'm not an artist, but having something where I'm like, it depends on my intervention is kind of a cool. So I'm assuming that's kind of what you're
part of the
getting
experience.
at. That is-
Well, it's very interesting because I'm probably going to get kicked out of this place right now, but it feels like a very conscious or not, like a very selfish decision, and it makes me think of this very short article I read in the New York Times Magazine just like a couple months ago about online gambling. And this guy was writing about how like he's gotten really into gambling on like Knicks games with FanDuel or one of those, and I'm not a gambling fan, which probably won't come as a big surprise. And what this writer talked about was, it used to be like you cheered for the Knicks or the Lakers or whatever. And now, you had personal interest in like who scores more points in like the first quarter. And so it really brings you into the game. And I thought to myself, God, I just like watching basketball. I appreciate, talk about process, like knowing that any guy that's on this court has like trained his entire life to get here. And if you've ever read like George Plimpton write about, or Hemingway write about athletes, like I appreciate, you know, that level of athleticism, the ballet of professional sports. And this, there's like an echo like in this conversation, because I'm in awe of the artists that I work with. Like they are so talented. They are so brilliant. And it's funny because I said before that I'm involved in public art, and definitely on the production end I'm involved, and it is sexy. Like it's fun to be involved and have agency and be a part of it. But also it's amazing to have no part in it, to sort of stand back. And I'm sure there are plenty of artists that you're completely uninvolved with that you're jazzed about.
Yeah.
But this is all to say that it does just feel like a little bit, I don't know.
I mean, you're
sad,
saying it,
you know, like I want to be a part of it.
You know, I don't think it's selfish because the artist is making the code and putting it out there. It's not like
I think it's like the instructions.
Betting on Julius Randle to outscore somebody else, and if Randle does well, then someone else doesn't because there's only so many shots in a quarter. I feel like it's a little different in this sense because like this artist has treated this code like it's baby. They've ran hundreds of thousands of outputs to get it to where they want, and then they're like letting you join in on the experience, which it feels a lot more like the Candy thing to me than like the basketball.
Like Dimitri Cherniak, like I bought art from him before he did NFTs. I bought 2 fine pieces of art that he used for the code. I went to his studio and he's like, okay, let's run the code. And then we picked 2 pieces out. And that was a really awesome experience, like to see what his, you know, brilliance was in writing the code and getting to pick that out. And, you know, I agree. It's more like, that's why it's the candy and the instructions are so fascinating to me, you know, and like, because I don't know if it's as much as like, I want, you know, look, I can't be an artist, right? I don't have the talent.
You showed us that dwarf. I mean, that was great.
That's
well, that was both. We did that together. We did
that was a joint effort.
What's the line from Titanic? Paint me like one of your French girls' jackets.
Paint me like one of your chubby.
If you want to do that later, you and I could do that. You know, it's fine.
Well, I'm not an artist. That's the whole point.
Okay.
I will set you up with someone else who will.
Yeah. And I think that. So, all right, I'm going to show you just a couple more. So we're going to do this one, which is.
I know that one.
Okay. Deeze.
Oh yeah.
Do you know this?
Do you like it?
Very much.
Yeah, me too. I was actually.
Can you
Is that
tell?
the Arc de Triomphe with something over it? I can't tell. Is that like the unveiling of it before it's unveiled?
That was the grand opening.
Yeah.
17.
Napoleon cut.
No,
the ribbon.
I mean I know it's. I don't know what it is. I've been to Europe one time. I'm very.
Okay. Do you know? So there's
Dude,
an artist
let's
named
go to JFK right now.
Jean-Claude and Christo. Christo and Jean-Claude. They did Gates in New York in 2005. Remember those like orange wrapped fabric?
Central Park.
They did Surround Island. So there are these artists that kind of defy segmentation. Are they land artists? Are they conceptual artists? Are they perform? And what are they?
Yeah.
And I have had the great fortune of working closely with their estate and foundation. And so that was the Arc de Triomphe. It was his first posthumous work. Christo died, and this was his like 30-year dream to wrap the Arc de Triomphe.
Okay, so I wasn't intuitively wrong.
Yeah.
No,
but
you weren't.
Thank God. I was like,
You weren't at all.
But what
like where else is this?
What I didn't show you is we, at the time, Sotheby's partnered with Snapchat and did a Snapchat filter where you'd basically like in your living room, it would bring in the Arc de Triomphe and then it would like animate wrapping it. And it was kind of like, it was a little bit of a weird thing and it kind of took away from this. But again, to the point of like, what's your relationship to the piece in your world? This Christo and Jean-Claude, when you would say like, well, what's the meaning behind it? Like, what's the point? What's the point of the fat dwarf, you know, shitting on the ground? Like he would say, what do you think? And if you hated it, if you loved it, if you were angry about it, if you thought it would kill some birds, whatever your response was. Or kill some people. That was one time. And,
Or kill some
but if that was the point. He was like, as long as you're having a response to it, I don't care. And I think one of the interesting things with NFTs in our space is like people got fired up about it and were like, this is bullshit. This isn't real. You shouldn't care about it. But I think if you're following kind of the Christo model, you would say that's a response to the art. Like whether you like it or not, you just responded to it.
We all agree with
especially
that.
even like, you know, going back to Beeple's dick butt. That's what I actually said on Twitter. I was like, the fact that you're all disgusted by it and talking about it means that I think it's his best. Right. And I actually thought that's why I thought it was his best piece, because his other stuff I felt like is great and it's cartoony and whatever. This was one where that was like, oh, they had like this visceral reaction to it. I'm like, no, that's sometimes what you want from art. Back to the dolls that he did. Like, he wanted people to be like, wait, what's going on here, and question that.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes what art's supposed to be.
But it's not difficult to offend.
Of course, yes.
That's not.
But it can be difficult to elicit any emotional response. Like it can. It really, you can show a group of people something they don't even pay attention to.
I didn't. And by the way, that goes back to kind of like the blue piece. I love that blue piece because I didn't understand this piece until Amira explained to me that was supposed to the reaction. Like, wait, it's just blue, white line? I don't get it. And then that was sort of like, and obviously TJO played on this. Like, that's obvious, right? So I think that there's something to say about that. All right, I'm going to leave off with two artists that both of us feel are I'm going to be very honest, are probably coming up in our space, probably the top two space. Okay.
Want to go?
So we're going to show you both. One, this is the first one, and I know that Samantha has seen this before.
Right.
And I
you show me this.
So this is Sam Spratt, who is really sort of blowing up in the space and sold at Christie's and Sotheby's. And this is Ferocious. He sold also at Christie's and Sotheby's recently as well.
He had like the 7 foot tall
statue.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, I just have to interrupt with a question. Are there artists in your space who go by their birth names, their Christian names?
So Ferocious is
that unusual? Just curious.
Victor. Yeah, it's Victor, and Sam Spratt is Sam Spratt. So, yeah. My name is Redbeard, but I go by Benny. I don't know if that helps. Yeah. So I guess
I'm pretty sure when they sell through Christie's, it shows as Fiwo for Ferocious. It doesn't show as like Victor Langlois.
Beeple is Beeple. Yeah.
It was Beeple.
Yeah, so I guess our last question would be about two artists like that. Okay, so let's use an example. And I know you deal more with like in that level, but here are two artists. One is older than the other. One started. Sam has been a tremendous success in doing commercial work for album covers for all the big artists. He's done video games and whatnot. Fiwo is 21 years old, obviously kind of came up in this space, and they're both selling at Christie's and Sotheby's. So I guess what the last question we have is, here you have two amazing artists, brilliant, and in our opinions, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but there's obviously a connection where Christie's and Sotheby's, it's real sales. They're not those fake sales. These are real, auctions they're doing. At what point do we find that we could start to bridge somewhat of a connection? And artists like this who are starting to do it. What else do we need to? I mean, this was a good conversation today because I think we realized that there's so much that we actually have in common and agree with. And I guess to end like that, where do you see us?
Kind of put that back on you a little bit and say the traditional art market is the thing that came before. You guys are kind of the new thing. What do you want out of it? Like, what are you looking for?
So I think that for us, what we want out of it is, I think that honestly, if you're asking me, and Deeze, could you answer differently? I would like that the artists that are in this space to be taken.
You want validation.
Validation for them, not for me. I don't care as a collector. It doesn't matter. And it's
not. And you look at it and go, "This is good," and I want it to be recognized. As legitimate
take a look at it. And Ferocious and Sam are easy because they're just so amazing. But there's other artists out there like Grant River or Joe Pease that I showed you that video where I feel like there's some amazing art out there where we're just like, look, this is art, right? This is not NFTs. This is serious art. This is not the trad art. We're all in one art world.
Right.
And how do we get to that point where those artists can be validated and taken seriously as well?
Yeah, for me, I just don't want the traditional art world to look at NFTs and think NFTs. I want them to think of it like, this is digital art. This is not like I think the NFT acronym really screws us.
So this is like, you want it to be another medium in the art world, not So I think one of your questions for us is like, if it's not called NFTs, how do you reframe it, reposition it?
If I would tell you both right now, because you're both in sort of different places in the art world, that I was going to say, okay, I have this great sort of art renaissance, it's like how do I package this and sell it? Yeah. Right? If you guys were going to do it on both ends of the spectrum, the high end, on the medium end, low end sort of thing.
You want to go first? Or?
So I think there's some corollary, not totally one-to-one. about 5-7 years ago, the art market, and I'm saying market intentionally, turned their attention to previously underrepresented artists. So like artists of color, female artists. And the way that was successful in kind of bringing them back into the canon of art history was by very conscious small steps. It wasn't like we're going to dump all the Black female artists into one sale and call it a day. It was like slow and steady, getting the buy-in from the right players, kind of like slowly chipping away at whatever bias existed, and then just finding the people who like didn't give a shit about the presumption and just like loving it for the art. Because galleries didn't really put those artists in front of people until it became kind of a cause celeb. And there was a little bit of a chicken and the egg of, was it the market or was it the institutions? Like, who picked up that mantle of inclusion first? And I'm sure there could be a really interesting thesis written on that. But whatever the answer is, it worked. And now we're not at parity yet. Like, we still have I have a good friend who runs a company called Less Than Half, where the idea is that museums have less than half female artists. But there's definitely a interest in it now, and there's the motivation to reach a little bit more of a parity place. I think in your world, one thing you can learn from the traditional art market is that you're not going to make all the people happy all the time. There are artists at Gagosian, one of the biggest galleries in the world, that collectors don't like, and they still spend millions of dollars at maybe Pace or Hauser. So you're not going to get everybody on board. It's, like we don't all like the same things, but where you can make baby steps that become big steps is finding the right buy-in from the right people. I think like what you're doing with us, and I think, Benny, to your credit, like you engage with the traditional art market as much as humanly possible, but every person you meet is not going to be the right fit to kind of pick up the mantle.
Right.
You've got to find those people that can really get it, like it, and it's not going to be everything you've shown us. I mean, that was a hugely diverse group but I think like you've got to kind of make this micro. Like, you've got to pick the people. Maybe there's someone out there who loves Rothko and it's like, I'd like to explore that. But if someone's a naysayer on your medium, in the digital, then like you're not going to get them. Don't try. Just like if you're, people don't like glass art sometimes, and you're not going to get them to like glass art. So don't keep showing them glass art.
What if you can smoke out of it?
Exactly. Like that's
the glass art I collect.
Yeah.
But so I think
I just got him a nice glass art.
You've got to like, this friend of mine who runs Less Than Half, her goal is, I'm not going to get every collector to collect female artists, but I can probably get female collectors to get interested in female artists more easily. Mm-hmm. So I think if you can find the market players, like you met one of the collectors that we work with, Mike, he collects traditional art and he collects NFTs, and like he's a good bridge the gap type person. Right. And I think you have to do a ton of educational outreach, because unfortunately what you live in, like we asked you a million how you meant this, what do you mean the code, the computer did it, like you need to make sure more people understand it on a basic level. And I think you've talked a lot about like looking at your kids growing up. This is going to be much more comfortable for them than it is for us. Right. So you might have to admit there's a little bit of a long game here. It might not be even in your lifetime, but during Kasut's lifetime, during some of the artists that we now know and love, they, kind of toiled away in obscurity. So I don't think it's that bad for you. I think there's a strong runway, but you kind of have to target it, because you're not going to get the art world, the art market. You're going to get individual people who become like small tentacles.
Pieces. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for my TED Talk.
No, I feel like, going back to art blocks all the time, but they're like really starting to do that. The Pace Gallery
with
and
Pace
the Famous Over Manhattan.
I think Eric Holderon really...
But I would push on that a little bit, that, it's great that Sotheby's and Christie's have these auctions, but, and it's great that Pace has these artists, and those are definitely inroads. But are they trends? Are they fads? Are they something that those kind of big institutions are trying to get in on while there's interest in money? Or do they actually have a long-term commitment to it? And I would kind of caution that in the art world, people try a lot of stuff and then they get rid of it overnight. And
they're not interested anymore.
Right. And I think, while you have the agency and the leverage, it's kind of up to you to push it further. So I think if you are in a moment now where these artists kind of have the market in a little bit of like, they're going to bend over and give you what you want, you have to be careful about your asks, and you need to understand the market well enough to know what you're asking for and how it's going to be the most impactful.
That's very well said.
I love it.
Yeah. I'll be brief, because I think Samantha represents, as we've discussed, the art market, and maybe to some extent. I represent, a different part of the art world, certainly not the market. People like me need to be convinced why this is an interesting new genre. People who have a lot of trouble with the blockchain, people who look at the actual images on a computer screen and are confused by blockchain and don't understand why they're just not looking at a digital image. Like, why is this more than, So, I think when we talk about generative art, when we talk about agency and inclusion, that's where it starts to get interesting. That's where it feels like it's something fresh. Because I've seen digital art pre-blockchain at museums, video art sure, at museums. I said before, personally, it never really engaged me. I need to be convinced still 4 years in, or 5 or whatever, why it's interesting and why it's important.
Or you'll never be convinced. And that's okay. You might not, like the Felix Gonzalez Torres sold for $8 million at Christie's, but like someone else might look at that and be like, if I want candy, I'll go buy candy. I don't need to spend
it. And I mean, the idea that art is subjective, I mean, it's true.
Of course.
I think to forever, see it from your perspective, perhaps, to see it as like a crusade is ill-advised. To see it as like, you know what? You go to a gallery opening and sometimes you don't like the work, and that's okay. You walk out of the gallery and you're not the person.
So we don't have to convince everybody.
No.
And I don't think you should, because I also think that unfortunately you're somewhat tied to the crypto world. And like we've all, in the art world, watched that explode and been like, oh, thank God I didn't get into NFTs or crypto.
And I think that, like Deeze said, the fact that they're connected makes it a little confusing. But I've been saying this for a while, and then, myself and Deeze and Will and Brian, who's here, like a lot of us have put on sort of our own galleries. We rented a movie theater last year to display all the art. We displayed Deeze's stuff. Will and I and our other partner Ian, we rented a movie theater with 8 theaters in it, and again, I think it goes back to also the hardware. If the hardware shows how, because this stuff is beautiful, but you do need really good hardware to show it off. And if you don't, like Joe Pease's piece, I think, it's funny because your reaction to that, I think I like the best, because you're like, it was cool. It was interesting. And the way he makes it is fascinating. Right. And I think that there's a way to connect, to explain and give parts of it. It's not just about the blockchain, but really about sort of this whole idea of like what the art represents digitally can mean many things. And I think that's the key to in a lot of what we have to do. So I agree with both of you tremendously.
I would also say though, like, vindication from the kind of milieu has never been good for anybody. Like if that's your goal, is to be like, I want someone, I don't know that that's the best metric. I would say your better metric is like, how big does our community grow? Not who did we, kind of convert to our religion, but how big did we grow? Did we get someone who, 10 people who don't collect art but understand NFTs might be more impactful than one art collector that goes, okay, I'll buy one. Right. Like your metric might need to change. And maybe your vindication comes in 20 years where there are more NFT collectors than there are of, Jeff Koons. Right. Like maybe that's where your metric.
And I'll go back to that story. I mean, I told it last podcast, but Warhol's first showing, he showed, nobody bought. The 2 gallery guys bought the whole gallery. Yeah. And they're like, because we believe in it. They took a chance. You have to have something, you have to have some conviction. They didn't need to convince everybody, but they showed everybody his art. They're like, okay, but we're convinced of it. And then they resold it again with like $25 million or something like that. So I do think that, and it goes back to what you said, a lot of like finding those young artists. I mean, that to me is a fascinating, exciting thing that's happening right now. So I think if we could like kind of work on that sort of, I hear what you're saying. It's like, don't make this a crusade. Like, just let's talk about the art. Let's talk about why we love it. Let's talk about like, let's have conversations like this. Let's show the art to the people, and rather than being like, well, if you don't understand it, then you don't get it.
Right.
And I think that has, crypto unfortunately has been like that for so long, but I do think that the people that we hang out with and the artists,
there's a lot of loud people in this space who are very dogmatic, and I would say have very binary takes on a lot of things.
Well, and I think like to bring this full circle, like in the art world, if you're not enjoying it, you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah. Like if you can't enjoy, then there's no point. Yeah, and so I think it's like life here.
If all fails, you become a mill guy, and you can mill wood and grow a mustache. Yeah.
Let me ask you guys, how much do you think 1,000 board feet of oak goes for?
I don't even understand what you just
A
asked.
1,000
So
what?
that's how I feel about the questions
Okay.
that I was asked
So
before.
1,000 what?
You know,
Oak
I,
feet?
know, I didn't get
I
his,
feel like
it's a
board
unit of
feet.
measurement for lumber.
I mean, 1,000 feet of oak
No, when
has
he
to
asked
be
me,
like...
what do you think this picture is like? I'm like, I don't fucking know.
Is it over
you know?
10,000?
You know? What's that?
Is it over 10,000?
I don't know. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
I thought...
See, now I know.
I don't know. I'd have to look.
All
it
right,
up.
guys. I really appreciated this. I actually hope we could do this again. And
Sure.
I like
after,
the
like,
traditional art learning
Yeah,
about, like,
and
the earlier conceptual stuff. The clock.
Fascinating.
There's a couple of books. I'll give you the names
Okay,
of some
good.
books
Okay,
that I'll give you
please,
a little.
and we'll put them up on the
Yeah, we'll put them on the pod
tweet.
so people can see them.
But Samantha, Avi, really, thank you so much. This just
Yeah, thank
proves,
you.
Having us.
Just proves, by the way, that we could all get along, right? I'm just saying. Right here, hold my hand, Avi.
I kind of want to go to a gallery later.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
going
we
to
should.
galleries today. If you want to see some trad art with me,
Yeah.
Like every Thursday or Friday night, there are openings. So
Yeah.
if you ever do want, I mean,
So we
we
should
go
go,
to
yeah.
all.
I gotta
of
I'm
take
from
a-
Columbus, Ohio. I'm never in the city. It's like
You know,
a
one of
whole...
my
You don't live
coworkers
here?
from Cleveland.
I don't live here.
We got you.
So, but what we're gonna do this again, and we're gonna
Yeah.
introduce you to some people. I told Avi we're gonna force him to come out and meet Dave. We're gonna introduce him to Dave Krugman. He's gonna blow
Introduce
your
him
mind.
to Sam and Fiwa.
And Sam and
I'll
Fiwa.
host an NFT conference in the Catskills if you
Good.
want in my place.
Don't test me.
Not
I'll
an
take
art-
you up on that offer.
just an
It's a
art
tree.
conference.
It's a real tree.
Yeah.
Art.
See, this, we have to start now. It's just art.
It's art.
Just
We're
art.
going to an art
It's
conference.
just art.
in
Absolutely.
We're no more trad art, no more NFT art. We're just calling it art from now on.
By the way,
Everybody
I
hear that?
completely agree with that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The term NFT is horrible.
Yeah,
I hate
it's
it.
terrible. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that,
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Deeze, you want to let us out? And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just once again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, throw us any follows or comments, and follow our guests on social media.
He doesn't have any.
We have some.
You have
We
to
have
physically
some.
stalk him. To follow
yeah,
him.
his
I'll
home
talk
address
to our-
Send him
Yeah.
He only gets mailed by
Telegrams.
pigeon.
Yeah, exactly.
And my social media
Yeah.
is really boring, but sure.
We'll shout you out, put it in the comments. People follow.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.